What's going on, gang, and welcome back to Scared of Normal. I'm Mike Murphy, and today we're sitting down with a man that has traveled well over 250,000 miles through 29 countries and over the entire continental United States on his Harley-Davidson chopper. We're stoked to welcome Charlie Weisel to the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is truly is a treat. Few months back, I guess probably like 6 months ago now.
Yeah, it's been a while.
One of your buddies recommended that you should come on the show.
Yeah.
And I started following you from there, and I was like, this guy is doing some really cool stuff. So I'm stoked you're here. I'm stoked to get into your story
Awesome.
and see what else you've got planned for the future.
Yeah, cool.
Heck yeah. So we're here in Longmont, which is where you reside.
Yeah, home for me, so this is pretty convenient and worked out well.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. Like, I mean, you're such a busy dude when you're out and about. So it's like we've missed each other a couple times.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, thankful that we're able to sit down and make this happen. For those unfamiliar with who you are, if you were meeting a complete stranger on the street, how would you describe who you are and what you do?
Oh, man, that's a good question, actually. Geez, dirtbag biker guy? I don't know. Man, I would say, when you get down to the core of it, I'm really just a travel fanatic, and I just love getting out there and seeing the world and meeting people, and I love going halfway around the world just as much as I love going halfway across the state.
Heck yeah.
I'd say I'm a traveler first and a motorcyclist second.
I love that.
At the end of the day, because traveling's where it's at for me, and the motorcycle is just sort of my preferred mode of transportation.
Heck yeah.
When I do it.
I love that that's the perspective on it too, that you just love being out there.
Yeah.
I was curious too, like I heard you roll up on the motorcycle, right?
Yeah.
When you are here in Colorado, do you ever drive a car, or are you primarily on a motorcycle when you can be?
No, I drive an old van that I like driving around.
Heck yeah.
So I drive it too. But it is interesting. I was actually having this similar conversation with somebody not long ago, actually. And I was like, man, it's like I spend so much time on the road. Like either I'm on the road, I just got off the road, or I'm planning to be back on, that when I'm home, it's kind of unusual for me to just get out for a day ride.
Sure.
I did it over the weekend, which was a little odd. I'm like, I was going to go meet some buddies in Thornton for lunch. It's strange.
Is that because everything's just so familiar here, or is you just kind of like soaking up being home when you're home?
So familiar, enjoying being home when I'm here. It's like, wow, I just like did a ride and came back and didn't even have to go to a gas station.
Yeah, that's probably pretty odd considering
pretty weird,
the distance that you normally travel.
Right, because normally, it's like, we just got home a few days ago, and now it's like, okay, in 2.5, 3 weeks, get back on the bike and head down to Mexico.
Yep.
So I'm like, I don't really need to ride between now and then.
Yeah.
I mean, I will if I feel inclined.
Sure.
But
you're going to get your fill in the next 2 weeks, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
How long is that trip going to be?
Not long, maybe a week and a half or so. It'd be kind of a fairly quick down and back.
Heck
but
yeah.
El Diablo Run is taking place. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No.
It's a big chopper get together in San Felipe.
Okay.
They do it every other year. Pretty cool event. And so I have buddies going down there that I like to see. Got a friend coming in from New Jersey, so he'll actually come here to Longmont.
Okay.
Crash at my place for the night, and we'll get up the next morning, head down.
Is he riding down from New Jersey to here?
He is, yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, so he's got a pretty good journey ahead of him.
No
from
doubt.
New Jersey to San Felipe. That's a pretty good haul.
It's a good little push, man.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. How many people usually go to that event?
Oh, man. Last time I did it, I suppose it's been a couple of years now since I've done it, maybe even 3. I would bet upwards of 1,000.
Wow.
It's a good size event.
So like when you guys are all cruising there, does it end up just being a bunch of choppers cruising out in
yeah,
unison?
as you get closer, you start seeing more and more people.
Oh, I bet
like
that's
especially
incredible.
like at the border crossing, you'll start seeing people.
Start queuing up with everybody.
Yeah,
That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Hell yeah.
And it's almost all choppers. Like last time I was there, you saw some baggers and normal motorcycles, but for the most part,
that's cool. It's probably a pretty unique group of humans to be hanging around.
It's pretty wild, man. Yeah.
A bunch of people who love tinkering and just doing cool stuff.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's go way back and
Sure.
Talk about where you grew up.
Yeah. So I'm an Air Force brat.
Okay.
So I grew up moving around every 2 to 3 years. Nowhere anywhere that cool.
Yeah.
We always seem to get stuck at some kind of crappy bases. And then I moved to Colorado on my own. That was about 23 years ago.
Okay.
And I've been in this Longmont Boulder area since then. And as we were talking a little bit before we got started here, there's a lot of cycling in there, which kind of fueled the desire to travel because I was traveling a lot for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I kind of flamed out on that, the part I didn't burn out on was the traveling part. And I had ridden motorcycles a little bit before, when I was younger. But I always told myself, I was like, man, when I'm done racing, I'm gonna get a motorcycle and I'm gonna keep traveling on that. And that's exactly what I did.
That's awesome.
Like within a year or two.
Such a cool progression too. You know, keeping it on two wheels and being able to just still go see incredible things.
Yeah.
And, I told you earlier, I come from the BMX background, and it's kind of the same thing. It's like, it's so funny to see where in my case, like a bicycle, I guess your case too, like the fundamentals was a bicycle, and see where that ends up taking you through life and all the incredible people and places you get to go see. So,
yeah, it's amazing.
When did you find your passion for cycling?
I did my first race when I was 11.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was pretty young. My mom was a big athlete. She was a runner. And so my mom kind of got me into it. So I started racing when I was 11. And I think I did my last race maybe as 25, 26. Okay. I'm guessing somewhere in there.
Solid little career there, man.
Yeah,
that's a long time.
Pretty good.
Heck yeah. So when you were moving around a lot as a kid, was there any areas that you liked more than others that you were like, I could see myself coming back here? Or just kind of like everything was all over the place?
Yeah, everything was kind of all over the place. I mean, we were in places like Abilene, Texas, and Montgomery, Alabama. And I mean, they all have things that are nice about them.
Yeah.
But I don't call any of them home.
Sure. That's very fair.
This is home at this point.
Yeah. So what attracted you to come out here? Was it just the cycling scene that was out here?
That's exactly it.
That's super cool. It's really awesome to see, especially like this Boulder Longmont Front Range area, like how many really badass and unique individuals end up finding their way here because of how much really cool stuff is actually going on.
Oh, there's so much good stuff.
We always joke around, like when you're cruising through Boulder, it's like you never know what kind of athlete you're going to see cruising around,
Yeah, you walk into a coffee shop and you could sneeze on an Olympian.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, they're everywhere.
It.
And it's so funny that it's just like a culmination of people here. And now it's starting to spill over into Longmont.
It is, yeah.
How did you find Longmont when you were coming out here? Is this where you landed first, or?
Actually, yeah, I did. I landed here first, and then ended up in Gun Barrel. Which is right in between Longmont and Boulder for people listening. And then, about 6 years ago, my wife and I moved back here to Longmont.
Okay.
We just decided wanted to leave Gun Barrel and, start looking around. And I was like, I don't really want to be in Boulder.
Yeah.
I was like, let's check out Longmont. And so we ended up here.
Got in at the perfect time, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always joke around. It's like Boulder Light now.
Yeah.
Because I grew up here in Longmont on Main Street. My grandpa's owned a store for over 50 years on Main Street. So seeing that change from being a child, like walking around on Main Street to like what it is now, it's pretty phenomenal.
Well, Longmont used to be like the other side of the tracks.
Mm-hmm.
People in Boulder be like, oh, yeah, we don't go to Longmont.
Yeah, Long Tucky? I don't know about that place.
Yeah, why would you go there?
Now it's cool.
Now we have a Moe's Bagel.
Yeah, I know.
So like take that, Boulderites.
We are basically the extension now.
Yeah.
And there's always stickers floating around. I don't know if you've seen them, but they're like, don't boulder my Longmont.
Right.
That always makes me laugh, man.
It's happening though.
It certainly is.
Can't stop it.
So when you moved out to Colorado, you were racing, of course, but what were you doing for work?
I started doing electrical work.
Okay.
So became an electrician because as most people know, cycling and motorcycling don't pay the bills. There's just really doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Maybe for a select few, but
the top 10 people in the industry and everybody else is working for it.
Enthusiast. So became an electrician because I needed a job, and I had tried college for a couple of years, and that wasn't going anywhere. I was throwing money out the window at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that really worked out for me. I got into it, really enjoyed it. Pretty quickly went out on my own and started my own business. And maybe a combination of luck and hard work. I don't know, but it was pretty successful.
That's
It
awesome.
did well. And so I did that up until a couple of years ago, where I basically passed the business off to one of my guys that was working for me, and I haven't looked back.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
That's super cool. What was
Yeah.
is it still existing then through one of the guys that's running it?
I was just running it under my name.
Sweet.
So he just basically kind of took over the client list and
Incredible, man.
still runs it.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
And so now, are you just riding full time? Like, what are you doing for the work? Nothing?
Nothing.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
dude.
About well, right by the time we moved to Longmont and got the house we live in, we also picked up some other properties at this about the same time. So we have those as rentals,
Awesome.
which is, you know, how we could fund a lot of these trips.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
How did you have the foresight when you were moving back here at that point in time to pick up the rentals, or was that something that you'd always wanted to do?
I saw like epic burnout coming down the pipeline
Yeah.
on the electrical end, and I knew I didn't have much left in me. And you know, being self-employed, it's like you're not, you know, I'm not going to get a pension
Sure.
or a retirement plan from the company I worked for. So I was like, man, I got to do something. And the logical thing to do was to buy properties. I was
That's super cool.
because, you know, at the time I was like, I'm not comfortable walking away from a good paying job, basically,
Yep.
to a zero income. Like there has to be something coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what fueled that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Did you find those properties through having your electrical business, or was it like
I have a kind of.
Yeah.
I have a buddy of mine. I call him a friend now. At one point, though, he was a customer, and he's a realtor.
Oh, okay.
And he was a realtor from years and years ago, and a customer from years and years ago. And I had used him in the past, and so I just went to him one day. I was like, "Hey, listen, I'm looking to pick up like 3 or 4 places. You know, keep your eyes peeled."
That's awesome. It's cool to have good people like that in the network, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like, especially, you know, through all the things that you've done up until that point, finding people like that was probably pretty easy at that point.
Yeah, well, it certainly
Or
helps that I've been in the
identifying.
area for a long time. You know,
Yeah.
you get to, and being in that industry, working residential construction, it's like, yeah, you meet so many people.
Yeah. Did you feel the burnout coming on through the electrical company the same way you did like through the cycling
Kinda.
thing?
Yeah. I knew the end was coming. I was starting to have problems with my hands and stuff like that. And I just found myself like really losing my fuse was getting pretty short.
Sure. That's usually a good sign that maybe
Yeah.
you need to back away a little bit.
It's like I managed to get out of this before I start burning bridges all over town.
Yeah, for sure. Were you traveling during the same time? So there was a lot of overlap there.
Oh, tons.
Do you think that was contributing a little bit to the burnout?
Kinda, because I mean, still traveling all the time,
Sure.
a lot, and running the business. So it was a lot of running the business from the road, and then come home and just work at like 60, 70-hour weeks,
Yeah.
trying to get back on top of things.
Yeah, I'm sure
You know,
that's
you're like,
extremely difficult when you're out just hammering away, and then you come home and you don't get a break at all.
Yeah,
It's just, and then you start missing stuff because you're doing the things you want to do over here, vice
Right.
versa, and
Yeah,
that's a tough place to be.
yeah.
Heck yeah.
And so my wife and I, we just wanted to transition into basically full-time travel, or
That's so
close
cool.
to it.
Yeah,
Just have the ability to go do whatever we wanted.
created some freedom.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
So let's go back to your early mid-20s.
Mm-hmm.
At what point did you discover what you wanted to do with the motorcycle?
Oh, like I knew what I wanted to do with it before I had even owned one.
Really?
Yeah.
And what do you remember, like
I already
roughly
had
what
the
age
vision.
that was?
Oh, I was still in my teens.
Okay.
Yeah, when that fire was lit.
That's awesome.
Because I had ridden motorcycles a little bit in high school, had some buddies that had them, just like little dirt bike stuff,
Sure.
And then I had a friend of mine that I actually raced bicycles with. He had a motorcycle. And so he kind of got me into it a little bit further. But at that age and that lifestyle, I could afford to go buy one.
Yeah.
Nor did I have the time to even ride it anyway.
Yep.
I was always traveling. And so, yeah, I already had the vision. I was like the day I quit cycling, I'm getting a motorcycle and hitting the road.
I love that. Did you have anybody that you were looking at, like through magazines or through videos, or anybody that was doing that kind of stuff?
No, I didn't know anybody.
Really?
I had no clue. No idea what I was doing.
I guess it's such a different world then too, you know, like just because there was no Instagram or any like sort of outlet where you could directly see. And
Absolutely.
There probably really wasn't too many people doing.
Yeah, maybe pick up a magazine at the grocery store, but that'd be about it.
The closest thing, yeah.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really funny. Because there is a lot of crossover. Like I've certainly have met other motorcyclists who have a long history in cycling as well.
Yep.
And it's kind of a funny story, dude. Like today, for example, I'm out on my bicycle, and of course, I'm out there and I just look like any other Joe Schmo cyclist in Boulder. It's like they're all the same, right? and it's beautiful out today. So there's tons of motorcycles out also, right? So I'm going down 36, and these two dudes on Harleys come by me, and the one's like right up on the white line. You could tell he's like trying to like throw his weight around a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking to myself, like, dude, you have no idea. Like, not to sound arrogant, but I'm like thinking like, I've probably put more miles back into parking spaces than you.
I love that. It's true though. And it's like, it's so funny. Like, I guess for me, even realizing that you were like a road cyclist, I was just like, whoa, that's kind of funny to think about. Cause like, I just never have it really expected those two worlds to collide. Because
they really, in some ways, are just absolutely completely different, like 100% different worlds.
Yeah.
Different types of people, like everything. But in a lot of ways, there's so many similarities at the same time.
Yeah, I see there's a lot of like, it's very synonymous, like in terms of like, especially when you're talking about like long distance and like having to be mentally tough to be able to do that. And like, it's very masochistic when you're out there all by yourself, just like hurting.
Yeah. Like I'm going to intentionally put myself in a position where I'm going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I feel like it's hard to like have that perspective, especially towards a cyclist, unless you have been one.
Right.
You know, because like when there's a cyclist on the side of the road, you're like, come on, man, get out of the way.
Yeah.
But until you've been that guy, you don't really empathize with them. It's kind of funny how that works.
It is. And then to kind of get like the cold shoulder from the guy on the Harley today, I'm thinking like, oh man, really?
But if you were on your bike, that guy would be slapping fives all stoked.
Exactly.
You know
it would be like a 180 encounter.
Yeah. We talk about this a lot, like in the BMX world, because there's always just like kind of similar to like the motorcycle versus the road cyclist. It's like BMX versus skateboard, or the new thing is scootering.
Yeah.
And the older I've gotten, the more I've had to realize that we're all just playing around on little kid toys.
That's all it is.
Yeah. We're all just out having fun doing the things that we love. So there really is no difference, you know?
We're all out screwing around.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, like how when you kind of look at it through that lens, you're just like,
there's nothing productive about it.
No.
We're not changing society. We're not
saving lives.
We're not doing anything.
We're just smiling.
We're just playing on our toys.
Yep. And it's hard to remove yourself from looking at the way somebody else plays and thinking that's not cool when you're just like, oh,
it's just as cool.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing. I respect that.
Which is one of the things I love about being out on the road is seeing how other people do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you see people traveling the world on a Vespa scooter, or like the guy who's doing it on he's like a Hayabusa, I think.
Wow.
And he's got knobbies on it and going across the desert.
I actually just saw that guy on Instagram.
Like,
I was like, what?
And some people are like, what an idiot.
Yeah.
And my mentality is, that is the most awesome thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. It's original. It's
I want to
hardcore.
meet this guy.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
I think too, like once you get to a certain point and you start to respect what other people do, because again, you realize it's all pretty similar. Like you're like, I'm not doing anything special. Neither are you.
Yeah.
We're just kind of on the same wavelength
and I get it too, like on my chopper, like every once in a while, like especially on social media. Well, that's really the only place I ever see it. And it's never on any of my posts. It's always like if somebody reposts something, you go look at those comments and people will be like, man, what an idiot. Why would you travel on that? Like, this is fake. There's no way you can do that. And I find it I just find it funny.
Yeah.
I mean, how else can you look at it, really? It's like, whatever.
Yeah, you can't take that stuff to heart because you're like, well, I know that it's not fake because
I just did
it. I did it.
But it's the same thing. Like, people look at how I do it and they're like, you're out of your mind.
Yeah.
Why would you do that? They make touring bikes. Just go get a touring bike. And I'm like, I don't know.
Doesn't put the same smile on your face, man.
This is more fun.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
For me personally, it's more fun.
Where do you think that that aspect came from for you? Like being able to travel the way that you like to travel?
I kind of like the added challenge of it.
Yeah.
Honestly. Like I think there's something really neat about taking something and putting it into an environment that I was never intended to be in.
Sure.
And yeah, you're kind of forcing it to work, but I like the challenge of it.
Yeah.
You know, when you break things and you're fixing things constantly, and I don't mind that personally. I'm like, to me, it's part of it.
There's some beauty in that too. I think that's like, there's a lot of soul that goes into that because in reality, just about anybody can go pick up a touring bike and go smash the miles.
Absolutely.
And like, especially if it's a new bike, you're not going to worry about breaking anything.
And probably do it better and faster and more comfortably.
But like, that's what that's made to do. And I love that that's your approach. It's like, this is not the right tool for the job, but I can get it done.
I'm going to see what happens.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's all it is. Like, I just want to see what happens. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't even know if this is possible. I'm going to try it.
That's incredible. I mean, it kind of takes you back to like almost like a pioneer type of days, you know, where these guys are just kind of venturing it out on tools or vehicles or vessels that they didn't really know if they were going to make it. And just like,
yeah,
you know,
like I did the bird trail one time in Utah on that chopper, and which it was a road that I found. It's fairly popular for like ADV riders and Jeep guys and stuff like that. It's an off-road route, and there's a section of it that's all switchbacks. And I was like, man, I kind of want to go see if I can get up the switchbacks on this bike. That sounds like fun.
Oh, man.
And so. But I didn't want to do like the entire length of the bird trail. I didn't have the time or desire to do the whole thing. I just wanted to do like the best part, which is the switchback section. So I looked on a map. I was headed to this party out in Arizona. So I was like, I can link this into that route pretty easy.
That's cool.
And I was like, I'll hit this on the way. And it was like the middle of winter. It was cold. And so I looked on a map and I found this road that came off this paved road. This is a paved road that I had done plenty of times in the past. But I was like, man, looks like there's this dirt road, or I think it's dirt anyway, that will get me to essentially the base of the switchbacks.
Whoa.
So I'm like, and then it'll tee into the bird trail. So I'm like, yeah, okay. I'll try this. And of course, I'm out there by myself like I normally am, you know, and got all my gear and tools. I'm ready for anything really, but I have no idea what I'm getting into. So I take this left turn onto this road, and man, I wasn't half a mile down. It turns to dirt, which I was okay with. I kind of anticipated that. And I get like another half mile down the road, and I'm like, man, there's a water crossing already?
Oh, man.
Like, geez, I haven't even gotten started hardly on this road. So at that point, you know, like the alarm bells kind of go off a little bit, like, geez, like I got a long ways to go and I'm already hitting water crossings.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So I'm like, screw it. So what I did is I walked through it, got up to the top of the little hill so I could see down the road. And I was like, man, okay, I don't see anything down there. So if I get through this, should be okay for a while. So that's what I do. Just plowed through it and got up the hill, head down the road. And of course, what I couldn't see at the time was how like rutted it was.
Oh no!
It's like super rutted. It's that red Utah dirt, mud, clay stuff.
Yeah, and when that's not compliant once it gets hard either.
No. So I'm just like stuck in these ruts. I'm just going and going and going and going, and then you know start hitting these downhill sections where like the water had washed them out. So I'm again having to like stop, walk it, pick a route, and be like, okay, how do I get down this? And then navigate down it. And a lot of those I just coasted down. I wouldn't even.
Wow.
I just shut the bike off and just roll down it.
Yeah.
You know, get to the bottom, start the bike back up and go. And then there's like, you know, deep sand and like these like scrambly uphill things where I just had to like gun it and just hope the bike didn't explode on the way up. It's like,
my gosh.
You know,
and you're out there by yourself.
By myself, just bombing this road, you know. And it took forever. I mean, it was like 20 miles, and it took like 3 hours to get down this road.
Did you see anybody out there?
I saw one car. I saw one person in a Jeep.
Were they looking at you like, what? Did they say anything?
No, they just kind of came by and kind of looked at me like, what dude, are you lost?
We are not the same kind of human beings.
Like, what are you doing?
Wow.
Yeah. So I finally get through that. And then I hit the base of the switchbacks. I'm like, cool, made it. And that road is actually fairly graded. It wasn't too bad. And, but at the time I had a foot clutch on that bike. I actually had a foot clutch jockey shift set up on it for, probably 15 years.
That's cool.
I just actually put it back to a hand clutch right before this last trip because I knew I was going to be getting into some gnarly, some pretty bad roads.
Yeah.
And didn't want to deal with it. So, yeah, so I started going up these switchbacks and they kind of get tighter and steeper. And I'm like, man, these are getting a little hard.
To get real.
Starting to get a little hard to get around all of a sudden. Like, I remember one of them, I go up and the back wheel starts spinning out because it's steeper than hell.
Yeah.
And the back wheel's spinning. And I'm like, oh God, let's keep it up and get up this road, Well, my foot, I got a little squirrely. My foot pops off the clutch because I'm kind of working the clutch
Just
as I'm doing all this,
Oh, man.
And it pops off and then immediately just stalls it. And so the bike stalls in the middle of the road, but it's so steep, I'm now sliding backwards.
Oh.
So I have like, handful of front brake, which isn't doing anything for me. I'm trying to hit the rear brake, but I got to take a leg up to do that.
Sure.
So I'm like, if I do that, I'm going to drop
Tip
it.
over.
And I'm like,
oh, man.
I'll never get this thing back up at this angle. So I slid back probably, 15 feet back.
And is there a cliff behind you, I'm assuming?
There was a cliff, but there's just enough of a flat spot. So when I hit it, I stopped. And I was like, holy crap.
Oh, man.
And then, at this point now I'm like halfway up these switchbacks. I'm like, no, well, now I'm committed. Like, I literally have no choice.
Yeah, you can't turn around.
I can't
at that
turn
point.
around. I'm like, I have to go. So I just fire it up. I'm like, I got like 3 or 4 more to go.
Oh, did you walk them up or did you just not even want to go look at them? Man.
But it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Then you get up there and you're like, dude, I just did that on a 10.5 foot long dual rigid chopper with a foot clutch.
That's a special feeling,
like,
man. Yeah. Because how many other people are ever going to experience a feeling like that, right? Like that's a pretty unique, it's probably a unique feeling on like a dirt bike, honestly.
Totally.
So to do it on something that's like.
People drive cross country with their ADV bikes in a trailer to come ride these roads.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. And it just goes back to exactly what you said, like taking a tool that's not meant for the job and going out there and getting it done. I'm sure you sat up there on top of there just like, well.
Sat there and took pictures and was like, cool.
On to the next one.
Yeah.
How long did it take you from there to get to your friend's party?
Another couple days.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, because I think that burned up most of the day, that little section. Then I think I got to the next town, or I did get to the next town, woke up that next morning and it snowed overnight. So the roads were super icy and snow-packed. So I limped it along in the shoulder. That's all I could do at like 20 miles an hour for second gear until I finally hit some clear roads.
Just got after it. I think that's what's so impressive to me. I saw that you just rode up to, was it Milwaukee?
Milwaukee, yeah.
And the weather was terrible when you were doing that.
Not good.
And like, I knew you were hardcore, but then seeing that like pretty much in like live time, I was like, because I was going through that part of the country at the same time. And I was like,
oh, cool.
Imagine riding a motorcycle through this. Like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So, dude, that's freaking badass. Yeah. So give us a look into what got you into your first long distance ride. Like, what did that process look like?
Yeah. Well, so I had finally kind of started to meet some people in the motorcycle world. And one of my friends at the time, him and his dad's buddy, were going to do a trip up to Teton, area of Wyoming. And I had never done a motorcycle trip at this point. So they invite me to go. And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's cool. Let's go. So we do that. And the whole trip is only a week long, maybe, not even 5 or 6 days, something. And then at that point, it just like spiraled. I was like,
got a little taste.
Hooked beyond hooked. I was like, yes, this is the way to travel.
That's so cool. How old were you at that point in time?
Mid-20s.
Okay.
I believe, yeah.
Heck yeah.
25, 26 maybe.
And had you done any modifications to the bike at that point in time?
No.
No?
No, stock bike.
And it's the same one you have now, right?
I had a bike previous.
Okay.
But this bike, yeah, I've had it for like 17 years.
Jeez.
Yeah, and it was basically a stock bike when I got it.
Yeah.
Had like big ape hangers and stuff on it, but I wouldn't call it a chopper.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, then it's kind of progressed and morphed into what it is today.
Yeah.
I think it's done. I don't know.
I feel like with a project like that, though, it's never done, right?
Yeah.
You always think it's done until the next thing comes along. And you're just like,
Like, maybe we should do that to it.
Yeah. Do you have any like projections to do any other projects? Or are you just stoked with how sorted this thing is now?
Dude,
and,
it's so dialed in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else I could do to it to make it more comfortable or rideable or better for traveling. And what, like, because I think it's surprisingly comfortable, and it's also incredibly reliable, believe it or not. And I mean, that thing's been raked over with a fine-tooth comb like hundreds of times. Every little kink has been worked out so many times. That being said, there's always little stuff where I'm like, I should probably deal with that.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna like stop me in my tracks.
Sure.
Stuff.
And when it's something like that, do you just wait till it breaks to deal with it? Or
Yeah,
you...
typically I'm pretty bad about that.
Yeah.
Actually, I always tell myself, I'm like, if you'd fix this when you knew it was a problem, you wouldn't be dealing with it on the side of the road.
Yeah, proactivity versus reactivity, man. It's hard to get out of that, but
right.
There's not enough time to have fun as much as you want to. So when
Yeah.
it comes to working on something, like I'm the same way, man.
Yeah.
I wait till all my stuff is broken all at once, and I'm like, well, now I have to work on everything for
Yeah,
2 weeks.
Exactly.
So when you went out on that first long ride, were you nervous at all? Like, did you?
No, I wouldn't say nervous because I had already spent so much time out on the road anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, because I was traveling the country by myself already anyway.
Yep.
Just in a vehicle. So the idea of being out there was by no means a foreign concept.
Totally.
I'd done that so much already. So no, I wasn't nervous. Maybe a bit of a learning curve, but even that didn't feel very steep.
Yeah.
It just felt like pretty natural for the most part.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's when you've kind of figured out where you need to be.
Yeah.
Right? Where you're like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. And even like combating the elements, which I think for a lot of people would be a sizable obstacle. If you're, let's say, moving from traveling in a car to a motorcycle and you hadn't really done a whole lot of, outdoorsy stuff beforehand, I could see that being an issue.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, you just need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yep.
Some days will be hot, some days will be cold, some days will be rainy. It just is what it is. But I had spent so much time outdoors previous and being outside in crap weather.
Yeah.
That wasn't really a thing.
Well, I'm sure going from like being on the road bike to like you're almost eliminating a little bit of the hurt because you're not having to pedal up the hills and like on those long distances.
Right.
Like,
and we'd go ride our bikes in the rain and the snow and everything else too. Like the training never stopped because the weather sucked.
Sure.
You just go do it.
Yeah. In fact, that's the best training you can do, right? Is to be out there. So it's cool to hear, again, some more overlap to the cycling and how that kind of prepares you to go out there and ride through the elements. Man.
And it's actually interesting because, like I said, I just, like in the last 3 or 4 months, have gotten back on the road bike. And I'm actually starting to see now, like, because for 20 years, I didn't touch a road bicycle. Like at all.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't. Like once I hung it up and it's done, like that was it.
Wow.
I didn't touch it. And so now to get back on it, it's almost easier to see those overlaps.
Sure.
I was like, yeah, there really is a lot of overlap here. Because like we were just saying, it's like you're still out there on 2 wheels. You're intentionally putting yourself into these uncomfortable situations, but you're still seeing your surroundings uninhibited by a vehicle.
Yep.
And you're still taking in the sounds and the smells and everything else the same way.
I feel like that's the most special part about it too. Is like being able to see the world in a totally different way.
Right.
Especially on the bicycle, like you're moving a little bit of a slower pace, so you're getting to really take it in. But even still, just I'm sure being on the motorcycle in some of these big open areas where you're able to just look around and just like take it all in. And like you're saying, the smells.
And one of my favorite things to do is, if I find a stretch of road where I know there's nothing for 100 miles, I love stopping at that like 50-mile point, that halfway point where you're as far from anything as you can get.
I love that.
And just like stop for like half an hour and just take it in.
Just take in the silence.
Like, this is awesome.
Do you have a favorite stretch of road in the United States to do that on?
I mean, Highway 50 is kind of a classic.
Yeah.
Across Nevada. Highway 6, which is just south of US 50, is the same way and actually quieter than
Really?
50. But yeah, I mean, there's tons of them. Get up to Montana, especially eastern Montana, which I feel like is like the part of Montana people forget about.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy that side of the state.
Yeah, it's very quiet over
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
And same thing. You can go for miles without seeing anybody.
That's
And
so
just
cool.
pull over on the side of the road and just take it in.
Just enjoy it. Sit by a creek for a little bit.
Yeah,
And
it's awesome.
that's so cool. Yeah, I mean, I feel like, again, kind of going back to that like pioneer mindset, like
Right.
being able to enjoy things that haven't been enjoyed that way in a long time, even since the adoption of the motor vehicle. Like
Right.
that's kind of like, I've watched all these documentaries of people when the car came out and like basically kind of doing what you're doing now,
Yeah,
traveling all over the country in their car, and they would just be sleeping in their car on the side of the
Yeah.
road, and like
Yeah.
people were just so in love with being able to move freely.
Sure.
And so for you to kind of go full circle with that,
Yeah.
and be doing it in a rugged way is so freaking rad.
Yeah. I just love it. I don't
Yeah.
know.
it's I love watching it. I've been talking, so I have this pipe dream, and I feel like I haven't really said it out loud too much yet.
Okay.
But I feel like you might enjoy this one.
Yeah.
So I really want to build some sort of contraption for a mountain bike that can go on railroad tracks.
Oh, yeah.
So you can ride the tracks. And I would
Yeah.
like to ride from here out to California through like all the old mining towns and stuff
Sure.
on a lot of those decommissioned tracks.
Yeah.
Because I love just that same thing we're talking about, being able to see things in a different way than what has been seen in a long time.
That's actually a really cool idea. It's funny you mentioned that because it wasn't long ago I stumbled across somebody who was basically doing that, but they had a motorized cart.
Okay.
But same concept. It's like this small little cart, just enough to put a bag on and sit on, and light enough to pull it on and off the tracks.
Yep.
But yeah, it had a little motor on it, but
That's so cool.
same thing, just sitting on a board.
Yeah.
Basically. And
Just cruising on along. Yeah, I was like, if I could figure out a way to, have two bike tires on and then like something that folds down so you don't really have to steer
yeah.
and like kind of grabs the rail
Yeah.
and then pick it up and put it on your back when you need to ride into town. I'm like, that
Seems
could
like
be such a fun thing to do.
Seems like
So,
it'd be pretty easy to figure out.
yeah, I think we're going to have to make that one
Yeah,
happen.
you will.
So when you're out traveling, you mentioned your first, long trip was with some friends, but do you prefer to be with people solo, or do you really not have a preference?
I wouldn't say I have a big preference. A lot of my traveling has been solo, primarily because it's difficult to blend schedules and destinations with people.
Sure.
And then, of course, as my trips have gotten bigger and bigger, then the amount of people who can tag along for 6 months, like
It's a little more difficult
yeah.
to do.
So
Yeah, it's a long, it's difficult to have a schedule that is that free.
Right. So, yeah. So a lot of it has become very solo, just almost because finding somebody else who can do that with me is difficult.
Sure.
But it's always fun to get out there with some buddies,
Yeah.
for sure.
Do you, when you're out solo, does it feel like more meditative when you're out there kind of by yourself, just kind of in your own head?
Yeah, and it's very, very easy. I'm not adhering to anybody else's needs, wants, schedule, which is a little selfish at the same time.
Sure.
Like I get that, and I have to remind myself of that when I am with other people. Like, oh, this isn't just my trip, and they're tagging along. This is our trip.
Yep.
We're doing this together. But it's just so many solo miles of just doing it on my own where I'm like, I don't know, I just stop here. I don't know why.
Yeah, you don't have to have an explanation for any of
Yeah.
it. And I feel like too, the more people you get involved, like the more, bad things can happen, like mechanicals or like you're moving slower
Sure.
or whatever it is.
Yeah,
And, like,
lunch stops are 3 times longer. Gas stops are 3 times longer.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that I'm sure throws a wrench in some of the travel plans when
It can
you
make
are
my
doing
brain twitch a little
distance.
bit sometimes where
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, why are we still here?
You're like, I got out of working because I didn't want to deal with this stuff.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's really fun to share what I love doing with other people. Because for a lot of, sometimes, you go travel with somebody and it's their one trip a year
Yep.
and they're not super experienced. So if I can ride with somebody like that, it's also really fun to see the excitement on their face, for the first time when they see something.
Yeah.
Where I feel like for me, the downside, because there is a downside, I think, the downside to being on the road so much and having gone so many places is that it takes a lot more for me to be wowed by something, which is something I've also always kind of wrestled with, because I catch myself sometimes being like, yeah, it's cool, but it was better there.
Sure.
Yeah,
I've seen better.
Yeah, I've seen better. And I have to like stop myself and be like, that's not the right attitude. That's not the right approach here.
Yeah.
This is still very, very cool. Appreciate this.
It's hard to get out of that headspace too, I feel like, because I think we're all pretty guilty of it, especially with the advent of the internet and like the accessibility to seeing all these incredible things all the time.
Yeah.
Like obviously you've seen so many of them in person, so it almost like kind of equalizes everything a little bit.
It does.
I like that you touch on the fact that taking people out kind of brings you back to that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's very easy when something feels normal to you, because you've done it for so many years, to just kind of write it off.
Yeah.
But then when you have somebody who's like sees something that you've seen probably a dozen times, points it out, or experiences something that you have and then points it out, you're like, oh yeah, that's why I do this. And it kind of, reignites that feeling in you again. And I know that for myself, when it comes to like bikes, when I ride with people who are learning or just getting into it, I'm like, oh yeah, like this is why I love this, because I see the joy and the passion that you're exuding for the simple things.
Sure.
And when you go past a lot of that, getting into like the gnarlier stuff, you kind of lose sight of that, which is
you do.
kind of a bummer.
Yeah,
there's so much beauty.
It is kind of
that.
a bummer, actually. Yeah. Yeah. It's also fun too. It's like, you're out riding with somebody and their bike breaks down and you can see them kind of starting to panic. And I'm just like, dude, it's cool.
I have been here 1,000 times.
Let me tell you some stories. It could be so much worse than this.
So talking about bikes breaking down, do you have an instance where you had like a really terrible, like what's the worst experience you've had?
I mean, I've never, only one time, no, 2 times. Take that back. 2 times where that bike has had to come home in a truck.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Otherwise, I've always been able to figure it out, fix it, get back on the road.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty good considering the miles on it. One time, the bike caught on fire.
Oh, wow.
In my cousin-in-law's garage. That's like never a good place, right? Especially when they live in like a gated community on a golf course and here's the dirt bag rolling in. I'm burning.
Yeah, just you riding through the neighborhood was bad news.
It's bad enough, let alone start burning houses down.
Oh man.
They definitely came home in a truck that time. Then one other time, just a massive electrical dead short, and it just wiped out every electrical component on the bike. Just everything, all the way down to the speedometer, like just ruined everything.
Wow.
And at that point, I was like, yeah, there's no coming back
You're
from
not
this.
rewiring that on the side of the road. Where were you when that happened?
Utah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I just come out of California, I think, or maybe Nevada or something. I forget where, somewhere out there.
Oh, that's gnarly. So when you're out, I'm assuming you're traveling with a ton of stuff to repair the bike.
For the most part, yeah. It kind of depends on what the trip is or where I'm going and how much I carry.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's pretty light, if I think I'm like, I'll be in fairly populated areas for most of this.
Sure.
No big deal. But like this last trip I did, I mean, oh Lord, I had almost more parts and tools than I did clothes, like just an epic amount of stuff. And a lot of it is still in the packaging, never got touched. And some of the things I didn't think I would need, I did need, and you're like, man, I'm really glad I decided to bring that.
I love when that happens. Yeah, when you like feel like you're overpacking, you end up needing something, or when you don't bring it, you're just like, man, I wish I looked at that. I should have brought that.
Why didn't I bring that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
when you're cruising around with all the gear, like how much of it is like camping gear? Are you primarily camping? Like what's your sleeping situation most nights looking like?
Yes, I always carry camping gear no matter what.
Yeah.
Like even if I leave for 2 days and I know I'm going to a hotel, I'll take camping gear anyway, as like a just in case. Like what if I do break down the side of the road?
Sure.
And I need to spend a night somewhere? I have all my stuff.
That's wisdom right there.
Yeah. So never leave home without a sleeping bag.
Smart.
Yeah.
So then are you primarily staying in hotels when you're out, or
No,
just
no.
crashing with friends? Like,
I would say camping and crashing with friends.
heck yeah.
Is the bulk of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, my wife and I will definitely get a hotel here and there.
Yeah. And she rides with you quite a bit too, right?
Yeah, she does.
Fair bit.
Yeah. This last year and a half has been a little weird. We've spent a lot of time apart.
Yeah.
We were both out of the country and in different parts of the world. But yeah, we've done a lot of traveling together for sure.
That's super cool.
Yeah, and she's into camping and all that stuff too. So
makes trips a little more easy that way when you can go out and camp and hang out.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. So we'll just ride for a while, and at 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, start to figure out like, well, where are we going? Let's find a campground somewhere and make that destination for the day.
Heck yeah. In the United States, I know you've been all over the world at this point in time, but in the United States, do you have a favorite destination or a couple favorite destinations that you've been to?
I wouldn't say favorite destination, but definitely had some favorite regions. Like I really enjoyed Utah. And then the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible.
It's pretty hard to beat that place.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Incredible roads, beautiful scenes.
Yeah, it tends to rain a little much, but like last time I was up there, I hit a massive amount of rain. It was pretty gnarly. Hit some dirt roads or mud, and it was like,
Yeah, and that's some nasty mud when it gets muddy up there, too.
Yeah.
It's so gunky.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I don't know. Again, though, I like it. I'm like, whatever. Let's get covered in mud. And
adds to the experience.
And the rain will clean me off. It's fine.
It's funny, like every time we've been on mountain bike rides when it downpours like that, and like there's so many people that we talk to and the same thing where they're like, you guys are crazy. Why are you doing that? You knew it was going to rain today. And it's like, well, the dirt got better.
Yeah. I'm like, well, you take showers, right?
Yeah.
That's just indoor rain.
Yeah, I can just wash this thing off.
You do that voluntarily probably every day.
Yeah, just natural rain. I love that.
What's the difference?
Or natural shower.
Yeah, natural shower.
So when you started looking at doing some international stuff, what stoked that fire?
My wife and I have done international stuff in the past. This previous trip was kind of a last minute deal a little bit. We had been planning on taking a year and doing a big South America trip. And just like months before we were going to do that, she got deployed. She's in the Army.
Okay.
So she got deployed to Kuwait. And I had just quit working. And now all of a sudden the South America trip is off the table. She's going to be gone for a year. And now it's like, well, what am I going to do? And she was like, just go travel, whatever. I don't care. So, the wheels start turning. And I'm like, okay, I got like 3 months to figure out what I'm doing. And crossing Russia had been presented. She wasn't keen on riding across Russia. She's always wanted to do the train. And I've always wanted to ride and not really so much in the train. Like I would totally do it. Don't get me wrong. But I would rather ride it than train.
You have the opportunity to
and she's
ride.
The opposite.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this might be my chance. So then that idea was on the table, and I'm like, yeah, okay, do the Trans-Siberian Highway. That'd be cool. And but then I start looking at the map and the time, and I'm like, man, if I string this together right, this would be an around the world ride. And so that's kind of what happened.
Wow.
So at that point, then I was like, I'm just going to do a lap around the globe, I guess.
That's insane.
Because by the time I get to Russia, if I ship it to Europe, I'm kind of already doing it anyway.
Yeah.
Like all I have to do is string together a coast to coast across the U.S., make sure I hit the westernmost point in Europe to make it qualify.
Yep.
And I'm like, I can do all that pretty easy. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm doing that.
Wow. So what did that route look like? Like, where did you start? Where did you finish?
It was, so I started right in my driveway.
Okay.
Left here Longmont. It was winter. So I went straight south into Mexico, putzed around there for a couple weeks maybe. Came back north. Actually went to Arkansas at my sister's house. Did Christmas there. And then it was still like way too early to head to Europe. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll go to Arizona. Got to Arizona. And then at that point, I'm like, well, I might as well just go to the West Coast and just start the coast to coast thing. And because I was shipping the bike out of Miami.
Okay.
So I was like, well, if I hit the coast, I have to get to Miami.
Yeah.
So that'll click off the U.S. coast-to-coast bit.
Yep.
I have that knocked out. And so, because I mean, once you hit Phoenix, you're like, well, what's California? I mean, what's
Yeah, it's right there.
the coast at that point? So did that, and again, still a little bit early. So I'm like, I don't know. I guess I'll start going north up the coast, and then get up north. Stayed with a friend in San Francisco for 4 or 5 days actually, and she took me around, showed me all the good roads around there, and then jokingly, because she was giving me a hard time, she's like, "Aren't you supposed to be going to Miami? Like, what are you doing in San Francisco?" I'm like, "I know, but I got the time." I'm like, "Well, like, where else am I gonna go?" And she's like, "At this rate, you'll end up like as far from Miami as you can get." And so I'm like, "Yeah, I would, wouldn't I?" And so the wheels start turning.
Turns into a challenge at that point.
And then she's kind of egging me on. She's like, "Yeah, you should go up to that reservation in the far northwest Washington." And I'm drawing a blank on it now. And so, yeah, so it kind of turned into her like kind of coaxed me on a little bit because she could see that I was that kind of person. And so I leave her place and I'm like, well, it's still warm. I'll just keep going north until it gets miserable and I'll turn around and head back south. Because it was like January, It's winter. And the weather kind of held. And next thing you know, I'm like, well, now I'm in Oregon. Oh, crap. Now I'm in Washington. I'm like, well, now I have to go to that bay, whatever it is up there. Nia Bay. Nia Bay. I'm like, well, now I got to go there. So I get up there. And it's raining. Now it is raining and cold. Now it's like
super cold. I'm sure.
I'm like, this is not actually pleasant at all. But now within like 200 miles, I'm like, I have to go there now.
Wow.
And that's where I started hitting the dirt roads because they're doing a bunch of construction. So the roads are all chewed up. It's all dirt. And also on top of this is COVID. Like we're in the swing of COVID at the time.
Yeah, so there's probably nobody out and about.
There's not much people out, yeah. And Nia Bay, the actual reservation, is actually closed also. So I told myself, I was like, well, I'll go as far as I can. And when I get to the gate, I'll tell them what I'm doing and ask them if I could just like ride out to the lighthouse, which is the signifier for the northwest point, and just turn around and come straight back out. I was like, I'm not going to stay. I just want to go to the lighthouse and come back. They wouldn't let me do it.
No way.
No, they were like, absolutely not. But by that point, because I mean, it's like narrow little roads. Like it's pretty rugged up there.
Sure.
When you get out that far. And I had just come off that dirt road. And so I'm like just covered, like head to toe in mud, just brown. My face is just caked with mud. Like, you see these eyeballs sticking out of this like ring of mud, So admittedly, and of course on the bike that I'm on, like the whole image that they got.
They were probably like, what in the hell is going on?
They're like, there's no way you're coming in, dude.
This guy is a loose program.
Like, this guy is super sketch. Like, no way.
Dang, that's crazy. Could you see the lighthouse from where you were, though?
No, I was at like a few miles.
That would have been even worse.
I was like so close. I'm like, I guess as far as I'm going.
I have to come back again, I guess.
So I turned around and went to Seattle. Had a family there. Stayed with them for like a week. And then left Seattle and I was like, I guess I'll start heading to Miami, and zigzagged all the way over. Went to Miami, hung out there for a week or two, and then shipped the bike over to Europe.
How many miles do you know up until the point when you shipped the bike?
I think it was like 14 or 15,000.
Jeez.
Before I even left the country.
That's pretty gnarly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're just getting warmed up at that point.
It's just like zigzagging like this.
I was going to say kind of some back and forth, some up and down, just all over the place.
All over the place.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty funny, actually. I'm like, geez.
So then when you ship the bike over, do you fly over or do you like go with the boat?
We've done it both ways. My wife and I have taken a container ship across with our bikes.
No way.
Yeah. Which I absolutely would not recommend unless you're like super confident that you don't get seasick, because it is absolutely miserable in my opinion. It was horrible. 11 days on the water, just throwing up the whole time.
No way.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah, I'm sure those ships are pretty savage to be moving around on.
Super savage, and they're not like cozy.
Yeah.
It's not a cruise ship.
Yeah, it's bare bones as it gets, right?
Yeah. But this time I actually flew the bike and myself.
Oh, okay.
So I air freighted the bike which cost an arm and a leg, but it was super fast. I had it in like 2 weeks. From the time I dropped it off at customs and got it back out of customs.
Wow.
It was super quick.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So before you shipped it over, do you like do a ton of maintenance to make sure it's going to be good to go, or you just like pack it as is?
Figure if it made it that far, it'll make it.
I love that. So where did it air freight into? Where did you like pick it up at? Okay.
Amsterdam, which is a good port to ship a bike to because they're pretty forgiving. It's pretty easy. Some countries I would ship my bike to Germany. I doubt they would even let it on the road.
Really?
But Amsterdam, they don't care. They're like, whatever.
That's sick.
Yeah. So if you ever ship a bike, ship it to Amsterdam.
Good to know.
Yeah. Although I have a friend of mine who just landed in Madrid in Spain, and her bike has also landed in Madrid, but I know it's still in customs. So I'll be curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I feel like that could be pretty similar to like an Amsterdam situation.
It might be.
They're pretty loose over there too. So
yeah.
So from Amsterdam, where did you head?
So from there, being as how it was still pretty cold and wintry, I headed straight south down to Baca de Roca, Portugal, which is the westernmost point of Europe. It's right outside of Lisbon. And I love Portugal. We've been there before.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah, I love that part of the world. So, yeah, I really took my time getting down there. That was really a lot of fun. Because at one point, like once I got through, like out of Belgium, because it's real congested all through like Holland and Belgium. You know, small countries, a lot of people. There's a village every 10 feet.
Sure.
So once I kind of got through all that, I basically just turned off my maps and turned on the compass, and it was like, I'm just going to spend the next week just keeping the arrow on S and
I love that.
Occasionally W, because I was like, I kind of have to go southwest. I'm like, so I would just ride, and I'd ride west for a little bit, and then I'd see a road pointing south and just turn and take that. And sometimes these roads would kind of fall apart and turn like dirt 2-track across the field, and then it would turn back into a paved road and end up in a village. And
whoa,
like you never knew what would happen.
But you weren't like looking at a map,
not at all.
Wow.
So I was like, I'm just gonna see what happens.
And for like when you're out there, you just have the fuel that's in your tank, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not.
So you're kind of hoping you hit a gas station at some point.
Oh my gosh, that's so gnarly.
Like, you hope you find some food somewhere. Yeah. Like I don't know.
Wow, that's cool. Especially like cruising through a complete foreign land, just like, well, we're looking at the compass.
Yeah.
Oh,
like,
I love
like
that.
I know Portugal's southwest of here, so let's keep going southwest.
Dang.
I'll get there eventually.
Did you go down like any roads where you like went down them super far and had to turn back because it just?
I never had to turn back, but I definitely had some moments where I had to stop and be like really look at it. Like, is this even a road?
Sure.
Like it's dirt. I'm just basically in this field. I don't really know if this goes anywhere.
That's nuts.
And you just be like, well, it's either keep going or go like 30 miles back. So it's like, I don't know, let's keep going.
And you're probably passing through the tiny little villages at that point in time, and people were people looking at you just like, what is this? What's going on?
You definitely get the looks.
Yeah.
Like who is this dude?
Yeah.
What is going on here?
That's crazy, man. What an experience.
Yeah, it's so fun. That was a fun week.
That's
actually.
So cool. So is that like a way you approach it often, or was that just something that
I certainly have done that in the past? Because inevitably you'll end up somewhere you just never expected.
Sure.
You'll end up in a landscape you didn't even know existed in a state or a country, and you're like, wow.
Well, when I think about like true freedom, that kind of sounds like it right there, where you're just like turning everything off and you're just like, we're just going to go.
We're just going to go.
We know the direction. Let's just go.
Yeah.
Wow. That's cool. So you get down to Portugal.
Yeah, I get down to Portugal. And as I was headed down there, my buddy, 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝙍𝙬𝘍, who lives in 𝙎𝘾𝘼𝘍𝑍, which is a little small town outside of Amsterdam, he's who I stayed with when I flew there. He also puts on one of the biggest chopper shows out there. Big show, very, very cool. Well, he was like kind of drilling me. He's like, dude, I really want your bike in the show. I really want you to be here for the show. And I'm like, yeah, but dude, I'm like headed to Portugal. Like I kind of need to start going east at some point. Like I got to get to Far East Russia at some point, like 20,000 miles away still. And but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, he's a really good friend, and that is a cool show, and he has helped me out a lot. Oh, okay, fine. So I get down there.
Wow.
And I look at a map, and I'm like, all right, I got to now get from basically Lisbon back to Amsterdam in like 3 days.
So at this point, you're probably like, you need to look at the map.
Now I'm looking at the map.
What's the fastest route back?
The biggest roads, fastest roads, and it just hammered all the way back. And got back, time for the show. Did the show, and then said goodbye again. Like, okay, we'll see you again.
Been here twice now. See you guys.
Catch you later.
Is the chopper culture out there pretty crazy too?
It's pretty good, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it's impressive.
I would never have really expected that.
No, I know. And a lot of vintage stuff too.
Really?
It's impressive. Yeah, there's a lot of
That's super cool.
Very talented and very cool bikes out there.
Yeah, it's never like struck me as like a culture that would have made it to Europe in that way.
Absolutely.
It seems like such an American thing, but that's badass.
It is a very American thing, but it has absolutely made it there.
That probably almost makes it cooler over there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, especially, places that didn't have the bikes when they came out and now they're getting the vintage stuff. Like, that's probably pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's rad.
Yeah, it's cool.
So from there, are you heading to Russia?
Then I did start heading east. Even then it was a little zigzaggy though. So I went across Germany into the Czech Republic. Went south into Austria, and then started going west again into Switzerland, through Liechtenstein, which is like the size of a postage stamp. I mean, like literally, you can get across in like 20 minutes.
No way.
Yeah. And then, from there, Switzerland, Italy, went south into Italy for a little bit, kind of running an errand for a buddy of mine. It's kind of a whole separate story. So then I ended up like pretty far south in Italy at that point. So then I turned back north, went back up, looped into Slovenia, and then you're in the Balkans. So you're into like Croatia, Bosnia, Montenegro, Macedonia, Albania, Bulgaria. So I went through all those countries and then cross over into Turkey.
Okay.
And then you go into Istanbul, stayed there for a few days. And then when you leave Istanbul is when you officially then leave Europe and you cross into Asia.
Okay.
And it's really cool because there's like 3 bridges leaving Istanbul eastbound. And when you come across the bridge, there's a big sign that says like, "Welcome to Asia." And you're like,
whoa.
Yes.
Had you been to Asia prior to this?
Yeah, but not on my chopper.
Okay.
So it was kind of cool.
That was probably a really cool feeling.
Yeah. Then go across Turkey. Basically followed the coastal road along the Black Sea.
Whoa.
Which is like a rugged version of the PCH in California.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's really cool. It's like if you did the PCH without any traffic and no towns.
Oh, wow.
That would be that road.
That sounds absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And the roads are decimated, of course. So
yeah.
you're getting
blown out.
Beat to hell most of the time, but it's worth it.
Whoa. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure the views out there were just
incredible.
Insane.
Incredible. And then you, from Turkey, cross into Georgia, and then Georgia into Russia and eastbound until you see water, basically.
Was cruising through Russia pretty bizarre?
It was kind of the polar opposite of what I expected.
Interesting.
Super nerve-wracking getting in. It took 3 weeks of trying to get in because they rejected me at the border the first time. They were like, no, you're not coming in. So I go back to Tbilisi, and luckily I had a buddy there, an American friend actually lives out there. So thank God I had a place to stay. Otherwise,
small world.
Yeah, it's awesome. He runs a tour company. So if you ever want to go ride motorcycles in Georgia, it's onward motorcycle tours,
That sounds awesome.
and he knows that part of the world intimately.
Oh, it sounds
Incredible.
That would be cool to
Yeah.
check that out.
They have bikes to rent, the whole thing.
Well,
So
to keep that in
there's
mind.
my little sales pitch for him.
Heck yeah.
Because he took me out on dirt bikes for like 4 days. And
While
it was
you're
like-
waiting to get into Russia.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my God, this is incredible.
That's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, so it took a few weeks. And then I finally got the special entry permit, the right documents. Basically found a fixer in Holland who had connections in Moscow and with the FSB, which is the modern day KGB. And he got me in on basically like a work permit,
Interesting.
basically. So I go now to the border for the second time with this new permit, which I can't read because it's all in Russian.
You're like, hopefully they don't throw me in jail.
Yeah, that was a legitimate concern actually, because I really didn't know, because it involved a lot of line
Sure.
to pull this off. Like I had to pretend like I was a dairy farm equipment mechanic.
Oh my gosh.
This
And that's
whole thing.
the last place in the world I would assume that you
Yeah.
probably want to be lying.
Right. So I got interrogated for a couple hours before they let me in. But then they finally let me in. And there's a motorcycle club right outside the border waiting for me. They are from a local town out there. And they had a couple guys parked outside the gates basically waiting for me.
Wow.
So meet up with them. And they take me to their town and put me up for the night, a couple nights actually. Took me out to dinner, fed me, gave me the whole local tour. Like amazing.
That's badass.
It was actually kind of neat because when I was in Georgia, my buddy was showing me the Georgian side of the Caucasus Mountains, because the Caucasus Mountains are right on that Georgia-Russian border.
Okay.
So he's showing me the Georgian side, and we're right up on the Russian border as far as we can go. And then across into Russia, well, they go then show me the Russian side of the
That's
Caucasus
cool.
Mountains. I'm like, this is awesome.
That's a pretty unique experience to get to see both sides of the range.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Because most people don't see both sides. It was one or the other.
Huh.
And usually the Georgian side. So that was pretty neat. So, and why I say it was a completely different experience than what I expected is because I thought that when I entered that country, that I would like truly be on my own. Like language barrier is massive. Like there's no way you begin to communicate. I didn't know anybody, like didn't know a single person in that country. We're through Europe and that area. It's like, I know people. So I thought, man, yeah, like this is really gonna
Be scary.
This is going to get interesting.
Yeah.
Especially because the war had already started.
Yeah.
So there's like anti-American propaganda there. There's anti-Russia propaganda here, which I've learned to ignore
Yeah.
99% of it. But it's still hard to filter that a little bit.
For sure. Well, I feel like when you've seen it on the other side, it
Yeah.
gives you a different perspective to kind of be able to like, well, yeah, I see it from here and I see it coming back to the States. You see it from here.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
hard. I had a buddy actually, he's done one of these episodes and he spent a lot of time in, where was he at? Baghdad.
Oh, cool.
And he said the same thing. He's like, it's hard to realize that people over there are like going out and doing normal stuff every single day, just like you are.
Yeah, dude,
You know?
there's so much unwarranted hatred amongst people in this world. I hate to say it because it sounds really cliche at this point because it's been said so many times, but it's just fueled by the
Yeah.
media.
It's
And-
pretty bizarre that is something that continues to just like the gasoline gets poured on it. And like,
right.
it's a very polarizing thing, you
And
know?
what's also interesting about it is that I feel like most people know that,
Yeah.
but yet it doesn't change anything. It's like, so most people are walking around aware that what we are reading and seeing is completely biased.
Yep.
But yet most people still buy into it.
It's very interesting. I have a good friend who spent a lot of time in the advertising industry, and he said something to me about this recently, just about the nature of politics in the world that we live in. And he's like, I'm old enough to remember when politics were not monetized.
Yeah.
But after they started monetizing, like these networks were basically like, oh, if we get more people paying attention to what we're doing, we can sell more stuff because we can have more ads.
Right.
And he's like, that was really the downturn of a lot of the stuff, you know? And
Yeah.
it is sad because it comes at the cost of getting to experience incredible places like a Russia.
Because it makes people scared to go there,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I mean, like, even when I was going there, I had so many people be like, dude, this is a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm going on faith based on experience. Like, this isn't blind faith. Like, this is based out of my personal firsthand experiences of going to places where people tell me I shouldn't go.
Sure.
And having an amazing time and meeting the best people.
Which I feel like, yeah, I mean, you only get to understand that by doing as many like just sends as you have done, where you go out and you're just like, well, I'm just going to figure it out. And like,
right.
I feel like it's hard for most people when you're kind of living in like a typical lifestyle where you're like, oh my gosh, even just thinking about going somewhere without a map on, like I think that for people is scary alone. So then thinking about going to a foreign country where you don't speak the same language that's in the middle of a war. It's pretty scary.
Yeah, it is a little bit. Yeah. I mean, there were moments for me where I was a little unnerved. You're like, oh, okay. Like, that's a pretty good sized military checkpoint I got to roll up on. Like,
that's so nuts.
Like, man, how's this going to go?
Yeah.
Because you know that when you leave Georgia, you're right in between Ukraine and Kazakhstan.
Yep.
So you're kind of going up through that channel. So you have to go kind of right by it. And knowing you're like, 150 miles that way.
Yeah, there's some not so good stuff going on. Wow. So at any point during that trip, were you seeing anything that was like alarming to you, or were you just kind of cruising along, like not seeing
for the most part, just cruising along. I mean, up through that corridor, there was definitely a lot of military. But once I got up to Volgograd, I think it was, which is a huge city, you're north now of that corridor, and then you start to head east, and then the further east you get, like here when we cross the state, it's just a sign.
Sure.
You just go.
Yeah.
There, when you cross into the state, there's a checkpoint.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they stop you, check your papers and whatnot. But the further east you go, it goes from like a highly organized checkpoint to kind of organized to here's like two dudes hanging on the side of the road, and they might just wave you through, and then pretty soon it's just an empty building.
Interesting.
Like, it just kind of falls apart as you go east.
Just less money, I'm sure.
There's nothing out there.
Yeah,
there's nothing out there.
So govern it.
What are they really regulating at that point?
Yeah.
The other military moment that I had, which was actually pretty damn cool, and I still wonder what they were doing. I was right near China, because at one point the Trans-Siberian Highway, you're like real close to the Chinese border. I mean, probably within 20 miles of it.
Whoa. And
if that, honestly.
That's crazy.
If that, it might even be closer.
I always forget that they butt up to each other too.
Yeah. Like, dude, literally, I'm on this road and there's like nobody around, and I'm just riding down the road. As far as I can see in front of me and behind me, there is nobody.
Nothing.
Like, it's just road and forest. And I'm riding along, just taking it all in and thinking like, another 120 miles, I should see a town. And out of nowhere, these two, I'm going to call them Black Hawk helicopters. They're not Black Hawks because they're not American. But
the Russian equivalent.
Yes. So picture a Black Hawk, right? This massive military helicopter. Two of these things just come up out of the woods, just like poof, up out of nowhere. And they come they're off in the distance at this point. And then it's come straight at me. They're just like following the road straight at me, and maybe 300 feet off the pavement.
Oh my gosh. You're like, this is it. This is it's gone. Yeah. It's over.
And I'm like looking at them like, whoa, what?
Wow.
And they're just like right in front of each other, and it's like directly above the road. Just straight at each other. And I'm like, what in the hell? I'm watching. I'm like, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa. I'm like looking over like, what the?
Damn, that's crazy.
Like, what was that?
Out there running some sort of exercise.
I'm sure that's all it was.
Yeah.
Just an exercise. I'm sure it was nothing.
Wow.
So I'm looking back like, are they gonna turn around?
Double
like, what are they doing,
Oh my God.
And then, they just keep going. I keep going. And then within 30 seconds, we're out of sight.
That's nuts, though. Yeah, I'm sure as they're flying towards you, though, you're like, what's about to happen?
Yeah. I'm like, what is going on here?
Dang, that's crazy.
It was cool.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. And then just back to nothing. And then just back to, okay, just riding.
What's the distance across Russia that you rode? Because that's a big landmass.
Yeah, it's about 9,000 miles.
Jeez.
Oh, it's huge. It is massive, massive country.
What's like the most like unpredictable thing that you saw out there?
Oh, the Road of Bones.
Yeah.
Was like 1,200 miles of highly unpredictable.
Really?
Yeah. It's 1,200 miles of dirt road to get from Yakutsk to Magadan. It's actually considered one of the most remote roads in the world. And it's a big destination for ADV riders like BMW guys and Jeep people. And because there's sections of it that are basically a Jeep trail. And but then there's sections that are not too bad, but it's all dirt. And yeah, the entirety of that 1,200 miles is highly unpredictable. Like every half mile, the road's changing.
Oh, so you just have to be on your toes the whole time.
Never know what's coming next.
Across Russia, did you have any bike failures at all?
Yeah, I had some starter issues in Krasnoyarsk. Well, I had starter issues for about a week, and then it finally like came to a head when I was in Krasnoyarsk, which we got sorted out. Ended up basically salvaging a starter out of a Honda Civic, and then retrofitting that.
That's so cool
to make it work.
Yeah,
yeah. And then I'm trying to think, nothing major. Broke a final drive belt out there on that Road of Bones. Pulled a rock through it.
Yeah.
Actually, probably a lot of rocks through it. One of them finally broke it. That was probably the most sizable repair.
Sure.
Kind of the biggest headache. Like, oh, it's going to take a while.
Did you see many people out there on that road?
No. Very, very quiet.
That's so cool.
Yeah. There's nobody out there. There's no cell service for most of it. Like, nothing.
Are you like carrying a satellite phone when you're out there, or is it just...
No.
Dang. That was one of the things I was like, I gotta ask him, like, how are you staying in touch with the world if you need to get in touch? It's just rolling it.
Wait till you see bars on your phone.
I love that. Again, goes back to like that true feeling of freedom, I'm sure, where you're kind of just like disconnected from everything that truly kind of doesn't matter, you know?
No, it doesn't matter at all.
You're out there just having fun.
Yeah.
So did you end in Russia?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, so I finished in Magadan, which is the furthest northeast town you can get to by road. Because at one point on that route, you're only within 100 miles of the Arctic Circle. You're very, very far north.
Dang.
Yeah, it's way up there.
So are you at this point freezing your ass off?
And it wasn't too bad. The nights were a little cold, 40s maybe, not terrible. Days were 60s.
Interesting. Every time I think about Russia, I just, for some reason, this is my American ignorance, think of frozen Arctic tundra.
And a lot of the year, most of the year it is that way. Yeah. But being that far north, like the sun never really set. Like it would kind of set.
Yeah,
you know?
Just kind of dusk out all the time.
Yeah. So it's pretty much daylight all the time. You know, it would get dark for maybe half an hour.
That's super cool.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Makes it hard to sleep though.
Oh, I bet.
That's the problem.
Kind of acclimating to that's probably difficult.
But it was good though, because I needed that time during the day to ride.
Yeah.
Because the route was so slow. I mean, you're only making a couple hundred miles a day, and it took everything in you to do it.
How many hours are you usually riding in a day on a trip like this?
Normally, on a normal day, on normal roads, maybe 6.
Okay.
Nothing crazy. On that road, it was more like 16.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's gnarly.
And it'd get like 200 miles.
How are you like staying focused through that stuff?
Barely.
Yeah.
Yeah, barely.
Because I feel like there's probably a lot of like mental strength that goes into those moments when you're like, okay, don't drop the bike, like don't fall down. You're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, you're just wrecked, beyond wrecked.
Whoa.
I mean, like from start to finish, you're just exhausted. Everything hurts.
That's nuts.
You know, sleep deprived. And
how are you like amping yourself up in the morning to head out? Because I'm sure you're beat to shit.
You kind of have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, what is your like routine to do?
Get up, have some coffee, try not to overthink it, and just go.
I'm really trying to put myself in that headspace. Just think about that. Like
the key is to not
days.
think about it.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's probably all you can.
You know,
do.
Be like, okay, I want to get to this town because they supposedly have a motel, and it'd be cool to get a shower if possible.
Yeah,
and hopefully you make it. And some days we didn't.
Yeah,
and it's like
just sleeping on the side of the road.
Sleep here. Hopefully don't get eaten by a bear in the middle of the night.
Yeah, especially out there.
Yeah.
tiger or something come cruising along.
Yeah, I don't know if they have tigers, but they definitely have a lot of bears.
Oh man, dude.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Have you had days, not on this particular trip, but just any of the days where you're out there having a hard time and you're just like, screw this, man, I'm over it?
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, there's plenty of days where I'm like not feeling it.
Yeah.
And inevitably, well, I mean, I suppose every once in a while, you know, it's a day where you don't actually have to go ride. I'm just like, you know what? Nah, I'm just going to stay at this campground for another day.
Yeah.
That happens for sure. Because you can't be on the road that long and without at some point just getting worn down. Like travel exhaustion is a real thing. In fact, that girl I mentioned that just got to Spain, she's currently doing a big around the world trip. And when she kind of started, she came through Longmont, stayed at my place for about a week and a half actually. And that was conversations we were having. I'm like, you need to realize some things. Like what you're talking about doing, being on the road for a year sounds amazing. And it is amazing. And it's going to be amazing. But I was like, but here's some harsh realities you need to bear in mind. And I'm telling you these now, not as a way to hold you back or talk you out of doing this. It's like, I'm telling you this now just so you, when it happens, you'll remember this conversation, expect it, and be okay with it.
Yeah.
And just understand that that's just part of the deal. Like, there are days where you don't want to be on your bike.
Sure.
There are days where you're not having fun. You just want to be home, sitting on your couch, you know, and
back
like,
to the comfort of normal.
I'm like, you get worn down.
Yeah.
And there's times where it's like, you're going to need to park for a week and not even look at your motorcycle.
Well, that's so cool to be able to pass that like wisdom and knowledge down to somebody from experience, because I feel like going on a trip around the world like that, you're probably going into it so optimistic that you're not really looking at the realities of like, yo, this shit is hard and it's draining as hell.
I might get homesick at some point.
And like, yeah, I'm sure just the mental fatigue of being on the bike in some of these remote places, not speaking the same language of people, and like, because I'm sure there's points where that's so scary. It is that homesickness sets in and you're just like, what am I doing here?
And sometimes you get yourself in these like traffic situations and you have no idea what to do. You're like, I don't know, like, where am I supposed to be going right now? Like, I can't read the signs. I don't understand them. And you're like, so moments like that, they get really stressful. And sometimes I'm like, if you find yourself in that position, just like pull over and stop. Take a moment, like assess the situation and figure it out. Because there's plenty of times you're like, I don't know, like, what am I supposed to do? What does that sign mean? I have literally no idea what that sign means.
Am I about to ride off a cliff?
Like, I don't know.
Dang, that's crazy. So like, it's cool that you're able to be the mentor, but has anybody like helped you along the way like that? Or you kind of just like, you said, when you kind of got into it, you're kind of going at it blindly because there was nothing to look at. So did you kind of have to learn a lot of the lessons the hard way, or was there anybody? There
was a lot of learning it the hard way.
Yeah,
for sure. But that being said, I've definitely picked up pointers from people on the way.
Heck yeah.
Absolutely. There's certainly a group of guys out there. They're all kind of stay loosely in touch who have done a lot of this stuff, and you kind of know who they are, you know. And in fact, I was having conversations with some of those people when I was in like the Balkans and headed to Georgia and didn't know if Russia was an option. I was having those conversations like, hey, like, what would you do in this situation? Like, where would you go?
Yeah.
And what do you think? And a lot of it too is, hey, do you know anybody here who can get firsthand knowledge of what's happening there?
That's cool.
And so to kind of developing this big network of like, I don't know anybody there, but I bet he does, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So making those phone
calls. Playing the game of telephone, like punting it down the field.
Right. Like, for example, my original route on this trip was never to go through the Balkans and Turkey. I never intended on going that way. I was going to go through Finland.
Okay.
And cross the border there. But I learned from, a buddy who had a friend who lived within like 5 miles of the border that border was closed to locals, to everybody. Like, there was no way I was getting through. And so at that point, And that stuff, like, you can dig on the internet for hours
Yeah, not find
and not
anything.
get this information, or it's 2 weeks old, which 2 weeks could be pretty old news.
Yeah, especially when
depending
you're
on what you're
ride,
researching.
Thousands, if not tens of thousands of miles
to get somewhere, only to get turned around and have to go all the way back.
Yeah.
And so it's that kind of thing. So it's like kind of leaning on these guys who have also done these massive trips, and they've met a million people that I haven't met, and vice versa, and kind of develop this little web of.
That's cool. Just such a cool community of people.
Yeah.
I think that's like the most interesting thing about these like alternative worlds is like from somebody's standpoint of looking in from the outside, you look at all these people who are like gritty and gnarly, and you're just like, those are the scariest people. But
right.
In reality, it's like the nicest people it's just this really cool network of people who not only are they extremely caring, but they're like resourceful and they're able to like help each other out. And
absolutely.
I think that there's something very beautiful in that.
Yeah. The motorcycle community, especially when you get into the heavy, big traveler types, is really unique. It's really neat. And it's also where I feel like no one gives a crap what kind of bike you're on at that point. It's like no one gives a crap.
Yeah. You're just respecting that people are out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I love when it comes to that too, because that almost crosses the lines into whatever anybody's doing, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like when you see somebody that's out there passionate and they're doing something in a way that they believe, no matter what it is, you're just like, well, I do that too. So I respect you, and like friendships develop out of that really well. And I think that there's beauty in that too, when you just like, it's just like real recognized, real kind of respect. And I think that's super cool.
Absolutely.
So like going back to kind of you traveling all over the world and you meeting all these different types of people, whether they're, on a motorcycle or not, what have been like some of the most memorable encounters for you over the years? And I'm sure there's a ton of them. So
I know, it's always hard.
Such a tough thing.
It's like, how do I pick one out of hundreds?
Is it somebody you've seen on the side of the road, or some kid that loses their mind? I'm always just so curious.
Yeah. As far as like most memorable, I don't even know if I could pick one out. I feel like it almost, like you take all these small moments and they get condensed into one big moment, right? So, for example, the first one that came to mind is in Spain, I think Spain or Portugal somewhere. Tiny little 2-lane back road, beautiful. I'm cruising along 30 miles an hour, not moving fast because I'm just taking it all in. And I see a guy on the side of the road with his bicycle, obviously touring on his bicycle. So I'm like, I haven't really seen anybody in a while. Stop and say hello. And so, yeah, it's like those moments where you pull over, you meet this guy. He's from Germany. He's out on some like 3-week bicycle tour. He's stopped to make himself coffee and lunch, and we ended up just sitting there kind of BSing and talking about what we're doing and where we're going, and kind of sharing this little bonding moment of like, yeah, we're both out here on this like really amazing road. It's beautiful. And I'm on a motorcycle. He's on his bicycle. So we're kind of doing it the same way, similar. And so you take like so many moments like that. I feel like those just kind of equal like these big monumental aha moments. Like, this is why I do this.
Sure.
And somebody else just came to mind, and he was actually a little bit inspirational. And I've stayed in touch with him. Actually, we still talk over WhatsApp. A German guy as well. Germans are really good about traveling, so you meet a lot of them on the road. I met him at a restaurant in Turkey.
Okay.
He was on his motorcycle. We were both staying at the hotel next door. And we started talking. He's headed to India. No, sorry. He's headed to Iran. And I'm headed into Georgia and ultimately, hopefully, Russia. At this point, when I meet him, I still have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I still have no idea if I'm going to get into Russia. Like, my trip, I'm still thinking might end in Georgia. and make a U-turn and come back at that point. But I get talking to this guy, and we have lunch. We have a meal together, and we start talking about that, right? And I'm kind of expressing to him my concerns about going there. And I don't know if I can. I'm like, even if I do get in, like the money situation sucks because there's sanctions on all the debit cards, credit cards, like nothing's going to work. It's going to be cash only.
I didn't even think about that.
Oh yeah, there are some sizable hurdles to deal with. And I was like, I don't even know if they'll let me in. And then if they do, I got to deal with this, and this. And he just, it's funny because he was kind of speaking to me the way that I would speak to somebody, which was, why would you let that stop you? Like, why, like, you're gonna let that hold you back? Like, you've come this far? And hearing him say those words to me, and I'm thinking like, wait, that's the kind of thing I've said to people a million times.
Taste of your own medicine.
Yeah, like, why am I not thinking that way? And man, that really fueled the fire, that one.
That's cool.
And he actually, we stayed in close touch there for a while because the money situation was a legitimate concern of like, okay, what if I go there and I get robbed and I lose all my cash? Or what if I run out of cash? Like, what if I don't take enough? What if I get to Magadan and I don't have enough cash left over to pay for a plane ticket for myself and to pay for shipping the bike out?
Wow.
Like, those are big ticket items. Like, I'm like, I can do the math and take what I think I'll need. But what if I miscalculate? Or what if something comes up I didn't think about? Like, what if? So we actually devised a backup plan. He's like, listen, here's what I can do. He's like, I have a friend who lives in Moscow. He has a bank account in Germany. He's like, so what I can do is I'll put you in touch with him. So then we all started talking now at this point. And my backup plan was that if something happened, a buddy of mine here in the States would wire transfer money to his account in Germany. Then they'd wire transfer it to me because it can't come out of a Russian account.
Sure. Oh my gosh. That's crazy.
So then I was like, well, okay, that could work. I was like, all right. Never ended up needing to use it, but it was like one of these chance encounters that led to solving a problem, and a kind of a big problem.
Sure.
And it's just completely random.
That's so cool. And I think that's the beauty of like traveling. It's like breaking down those barriers or stigma too of what you think other people from around the world are like.
Right.
And like at the end of the day, it's like people just want to help each other.
Yeah. He's just a fellow motorcyclist, and he's also headed into a country where he's not sure he's going to be welcome. I mean, he's going to Iran. So he's got his own thing going on where he's like, I don't know how this is going to go.
Well, and I'm sure you guys were kind of feeding each other, just like, hey, man, you're going to be good. Well, you're going to be good too, right?
Right.
But sometimes you need that when you're out there or you're like down on your luck and you have those people that are, it is usually the most random encounters too that like, I know for myself when I'm having bad days or whatever, it's always like, I always try and remember to like go out and smile and say hi to people. And it's always like when I'm having the worst time, it's somebody will show up and like give me some profound advice or like just be kind enough to be like, okay, like,
kind of flip the switch a little.
Stop being sad. Stop being bummed. You know, it's kind of funny how that works. Dude, that's so cool. Yeah. I feel like, the amount of people that you've met along the way though, it's probably absurd. Like,
it's pretty,
the amount of help people are willing to give.
It's incredible. And that's why my wife and I always try to, like, we always tell people, like, listen, our door is always open. Like, if you are coming through Colorado, you need anything, you need somewhere to sleep, shower, food, whatever. Like, I don't even care if we're home. I will tell you how to get into the house.
That's cool.
Like, let yourself in and do whatever you got to do. Because, I mean, we've been put up by so many people and helped out by so many people in so many places over the years. Like, any chance we get to pay that back in some form.
When it all comes full circle, right?
Yeah, that's
like,
the hope, you know.
That's the beauty of, I feel like, when you do have that energy and you're putting that energy out, it always comes full circle.
Yeah.
And, you know, when people help you, you help them, and
Yeah,
it continues rolling.
exactly.
So at this point, you've done what, over 260,000 miles?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be at 270 here pretty damn quick. If I go to Mexico and back, I'll click over 270.
That's insane.
Yeah.
How has your relationship with your current rig changed over those 270,000 miles?
Yeah. Oh man, I love that motorcycle. I really do. There's some days I want to roll it off a cliff.
Yeah.
You know, I would never sell it. I would never get rid of it. I really don't think I would.
Just too bonded to it.
Yeah, I don't think I'd have it in me. If I ever decided to like retire the bike, I think I would just park it in the corner of the garage.
Yeah.
Throw a blanket on it. And
Yeah. I feel like there's
it'll
no
sit
way you
forever.
could ever get rid of it, man.
It's basically unsellable at
Yeah.
this point.
It's part of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And furthermore, like, I mean, can you imagine that Craigslist ad?
No, I can't.
I mean, like, what would you even say?
I guess, yeah. What is there anything left on that bike that is original other than like the
not
frame that was
really.
chopped up?
The frame's been chopped, but it technically is the original frame.
Yeah.
The motor, about it. The tank is original, but it's been modified. Like, everything's been touched.
That's so cool.
So,
Have you ever worked directly with Harley-Davidson on anything? Because I feel like
No.
what you've done is such a freaking cool thing for a brand like that. Like,
You'd think.
yeah.
The problem is that it's an old bike. I'm going to watch my words here. I feel like if I were on a new bike, like a stock bike,
Yeah.
I feel like there might be a relationship there.
A little more marketable that way.
It would be certainly more marketable.
Yeah.
That being said, I did reach out to them at one point. I was like, hey, how do you feel about hooking me up with a new transmission? And they're like, yeah, we'll give you a new transmission. I was like, sweet.
That's awesome.
Well, 2 weeks later, they call me and tell me that they don't have one and it's an obsolete part and they will never have one.
Oh,
So I'm like, oh, okay.
well, do you want to buy me a new transmission?
Yeah.
Write a blog post about me or something. Yeah.
Okay.
That's so hard, man.
So I'm like,
yeah, I just feel like the story of what you've done on one of their bikes would be such a cool thing, even if it was just like a.
well, the enthusiast, I suppose maybe I should take a step back for a moment. They have a publication called The Enthusiast magazine.
Okay.
They did do an article on me in there. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But no, there's no business relationship with them.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that comes down the road.
I don't
feel
know.
like that could be something so cool.
I think I would have to resolve myself to riding a newer bike.
Sure.
Because reality is, what benefit is there to them
Yeah, because they can't
to
sell
support
the
me?
bike you're on.
Yeah, there's nothing sellable about
That's
it.
a fair point.
So it's like, from a marketing standpoint, I don't really offer much.
Yeah. Do you do like many brand partnerships at all, or are you kind of just doing it on your own?
I have some companies that take care of me.
Yeah.
From a part standpoint. I don't have like any financial backing of any sort from the motorcycle industry.
Yeah.
It's something that I've been told that I should be working towards or working on doing. I've had some, people tell me that, like, why aren't you getting paid for like posting about these companies or like an actual paycheck?
Sure.
And part of that, I think, is maybe I'm in a slightly different position than some people. Like, I wouldn't need it to pay my bills necessarily.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to offset the cost of the travels because they are expensive, can be expensive. And I'm not good at that stuff. Like, I don't know, like, how would I even sell myself to a company and be like, hey, for X amount of dollars, I'll post about you 3 times.
Sure.
And then part of me is also like, even if I did know how to do that, would I want to?
Yeah. I mean, you didn't want to work anymore for a specific reason, right?
Right.
So that
Well,
turns into work again.
There's that, and I know that people like follow my Instagram page, for example, because they enjoy following the travels.
Yep.
And I enjoy sharing those. Like, I really do. And my concern would be feeling like maybe a bit of a sellout.
Sure.
Like, I don't want to all of a sudden turn into the guys like trying to sell them something.
Yeah.
Like,
That's very valid.
So So the only companies that I've ever taken free parts from are companies that I would happily go spend full price for that part.
That's awesome.
I've never used a part only because it's free. Like, I don't care. Like, if somebody wants to give me a free motor, that's fine. But if I don't trust that motor, I'm not going to take it and use it.
Yeah.
Because I'm more concerned about making the trip happen than I am about getting a free part.
Totally. I feel like there's a lot of equity in that too. And I think, for anybody who's listening who might be looking to take on brand partnerships or anything like that, it's like, if you're looking for free stuff before you're looking for like the quality or, for sustenance from that company, if you're just doing it for the money or for free shit, like that's,
to me, it doesn't feel genuine. And it feels like it's a hollow sales pitch, because I get people ask me all the time, like, hey, what do you recommend for this part? And I'm going to just tell them the parts that I use.
Yeah.
Like, well, here's what I use. I've had really good experience with it. Yes, they do hook me up with free parts. But if they didn't, I would get online and order it at full price.
Totally.
Because I know it works.
Yeah.
So do with that what you want kind of thing, And that goes all the way down to like gear.
Yeah.
The clothes I wear, the helmets, like all that stuff. Like, I mean, I don't really have any sponsors for that stuff anyway.
Yeah. But I mean, I even feel like, especially the industry that you live within, right? Like where you're at is so core and focused, and like everybody is doing such real things.
Yeah.
And so like when you are going and doing something that is not necessarily authentic, it gets sniffed out really quick.
And there's a lot of people out there that are just basically the influencers.
Yeah.
And they're trying to promote and sell these parts or clothes or whatever it is. And I don't know, part of me is like, have you like really ran that part through the ringer to see if it's any good?
Yeah.
Or are you just like hustling it because you got it for free and they're paying you $500 a month?
Yeah. Starts to muddy the waters pretty quickly.
I'm like, you're just a salesperson now.
Yeah.
Like, you're not a motorcyclist.
Yeah. You're not doing it for the culture. You're just doing it to make
And you're
money.
not helping anybody.
Yeah. It always reminds me of Wayne's World. Have you ever watched that movie when they're sitting in the basement?
Dude,
and he's
like, so long.
Some people only do things for money. It's like, and they're like sitting there in their like full Reebok tracksuits holding like Doritos bags like while they're singing. It's like, it's so funny, man. Just because, there is a lot of that going on, and it does really dilute a lot of the cool stuff going on, because you start to wonder who is doing it for what reason.
For what reasons. And I've always, for me, like I got into this and still do all this because I'm passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. And if somebody takes notice and wants to do a podcast, or somebody takes notice is like, hey, we want to hook you up with these parts or whatever, then cool. But that is like absolutely not the motivation. Like, if that's somebody's motivation for going out and doing this stuff, like, you have like completely lost sight of what this is all about.
Yeah. And when you get there, it's not going to feel like anything good, right?
No.
Like, we talk about that all the time with business. It's like so many people like say like, oh, I'm going to start that business, I'm going to get rich. I'm like, well, if that's what you're thinking, like, you might get rich, but it's going to take you a long time, and you're going to quit before you get there because you have to be passionate.
Yeah, you got to love it.
Yeah. And, you touched on it a little bit earlier when it's like you have those hard days and you fall down and you don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, you have to have that passion as a foundation to like catch you.
Right.
So you can get back up and keep going when you're in the middle of freaking nowhere.
Yeah.
So when you're out there in the middle of nowhere, also, this is a question that has been pinging in my head.
Yeah.
Like, how often are you dropping the bike? Is that happening often?
No, hardly ever. I mean, it does. Yes, it has happened.
Yeah.
Definitely. But I can pick it up on my own if it happens.
Heck yeah.
It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen too often.
No injuries out there or anything like that?
No, nothing major.
That's pretty incredible considering some of the roads that you've gone down.
Yeah, I'm pretty cautious though.
Yeah.
I'm not one to go down an unknown road, just hammer it down it.
Sure.
Like, I'm not that guy.
Calculating the risk while you're going.
Like, I'm the guy who's going to putz down it at 20 miles an hour because to me it seems smarter.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, it's like the more miles I get under my belt, the slower I am. Because I feel like I've already dodged so many bullets over the years.
Sure.
I'm like, I've already used like 8 of my 9 lives. Like, I need to be careful.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I feel like the longer you've done it, you start to also look at like longevity of doing it for as long as you can.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like,
And
I can hammer down this dirt road at 80 miles an hour on a hardtail.
yeah.
But why? Because I'll probably wreck it.
Yep.
And then when I do, I'll either injure myself, break the motorcycle, or both. And then what?
Yeah.
Then
Not
what?
worth it.
Not worth it. I'm like, why not just slow down? And if I do drop the bike, I'm barely moving, so it doesn't matter anyway.
For sure. And when you're going slower, you've already said it, but you get to take it in a little bit better
you
that
see
way
more, and you're not stressed.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little more relaxed.
Talking about speed, how do you kind of balance like the routes? Like, are you planning that out when you're going, like saying, I need to take these roads to get there in a certain amount of time, and I also want to take these ones because I want it to be leisurely, or you just
really
kind of
depends
stumbling?
it really depends on the trip. Believe me, I've taken plenty of trips where I had to cover a lot of distance in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
In which case, I'll just get on the interstate and just hammer it out. It sucks. Like, I don't enjoy it. But if I need to get from here to LA in 2 days, I'm just going to get on I-70 and get it done.
That's crazy.
You know? So
yeah. I'm sure too, with it being hardtail going down the interstate at speed that's probably when it's the most uncomfortable.
yeah, it's just so boring, and the wind is beating you up, and there's nothing to see. I mean, the interstates are
Predictable.
they're predictable, and they're put through like the ugliest parts of America typically.
Yeah.
But if I need to cruise at 85 miles an hour for 12 hours, I can do it, and I will, and have.
What's the top speed on that bike?
120 is what I'm going to say.
Yeah. Have you done it?
I have.
Oh my gosh.
On the German Autobahn. So we're out there, and my wife and I had gotten on the Autobahn for not long. We're just bridging a gap somewhere, and so it made sense. And I looked at her. I'm like, yeah, this is the road to like finally figure out like what this thing really has in it, because it's kind of hard to do on American roads.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, like I-70 across Kansas, yeah, you could do it, but if you get stopped by the cops, like, you're going to jail.
Yeah, you
right?
never know where state patrol is going to be
Right.
sitting.
Where in Germany on the Autobahn, there's like no speed limit.
Yeah.
So you can actually do it legally. And so we get out there, and I'm watching the speed limit signs, because there are parts of it that do have a speed limit. And I'm waiting for the sign that says no speed limit. So I see it. I'm like, here we go. Look over at her, and she's like, you do you, man.
Have fun.
Whatever. And so I just grab a handful of throttle and start getting after it, and get up to like 100, 110, 115, get up to 120. And the bike actually had more in it.
Really?
I bet that thing could hit 140, 145. But the problem is that front end started to get super, super light. And so next thing you know,
just from the wind coming into the bike,
it's probably
you think?
catching from underneath, and the
Yeah.
front end is pretty light hanging out that far. And so next thing you know, I realize I'm like, this thing isn't even steering anymore.
Oh my,
I'm just like floating. I'm like, I have no control at this moment. So at that point I was like, and we're done.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, okay, 120. We're going to call that top speed.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it was terrifying. Which, here's the best part. As I'm doing this, I'm being like passed by station wagons with kids in them and stuff. Like Mercedes station wagon is like pulling by me, probably doing 150. And you're like, what is happening?
That's nuts. They're probably looking over at you thinking the same thing.
Same
They're
thing.
like, what is going on?
Yeah, and I wasn't even in the far left lane. I was in like the middle lane doing 120.
Wow.
And I learned, I was like, oh, you don't even consider that left lane
Yeah.
until you're doing like 150.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen videos of cars over there just doing like 200 plus on that road. That's nuts.
Insane.
That's crazy. Wow. I can't imagine how scary that realization was, though, of like turning the bars a little bit and being like, oh,
like there's nothing there.
yeah, I just have to lean.
Yeah.
Did you just like let out of the throttle?
I just let off it.
Yeah, because like you don't want to touch the brakes at that speed,
no,
right?
God, no. It's just like,
Wow. That's crazy. Well, so your wife was with you. What kind of bike was she, or does she ride?
She has two bikes.
Okay.
She has a custom built chopper.
Sick.
It's not long like mine. It's a normal length, but it's a hardtail Springer front end. Very cool bike. Then she has a Honda Africa Twin adventure bike.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Is your chopper your only bike right now, or do you have an adventure bike as well?
No, it's my only bike. I had a BMW GS for a few years actually, because I had broken the frame on the chopper at one point, 6-7 years ago maybe, and so I knew at that point, and the bike kind of needed to be torn down and needed rebuilt anyway. So at that point, I'm like, man, I'm not gonna have a bike for a while. Like this thing needs more than just a tack weld on the frame. Like this thing really needs to be fully stripped.
Dang.
Motor rebuild. Like there's so many other things wrong at this point. So my wife was like, you're gonna go insane without a motorcycle. I know you've been looking at those BMWs. So she's like, just go down to the dealer and buy one. So I'm like, yeah, that's a good idea. I should do that. So she's like, plus it'll be good. You know, she's like, you'll have your chopper and then you'll have like the polar opposite.
Yeah.
Big adventure bike. Like, yeah, it makes sense. Cool. Okay. So I did. I went down, bought a brand new 2017, straight out the floor, fully decked out, all the accessories.
Those things are badass too.
They are pretty sweet. And got the big adventure version with like the 9-gallon tank. Yeah, dude. It was a sweet bike, right? So I roll out of there. I'm like, yeah, check this bad boy out, you know? And did a few trips on it. But as soon as my chopper was back on the road, that thing just got parked.
Really?
Yeah. And I did maybe like 1 or 2 more trips on it after the chopper was done. But I never fell in love with that bike, the BMW. I never connected with it. And then it just sat and sat and sat and started collecting dust. And so I was already kind of like, yeah, what if I should sell this thing? Like, it's really not getting used. It's kind of pointless. And it's huge. It takes a lot of space too.
Sure.
And so when I left for Mexico a year or so ago, at the start of this last trip, somebody asked if I wanted to sell it. I was like, yes, take it. So a buddy of mine back home here helped orchestrate the deal. And so I sold it.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of looking for a second bike right now. I just don't know what I want.
Not something like that again, you don't think?
No, I don't know. My wife made a better decision with that Honda.
Yeah.
That's a considerably more fun bike to ride.
Yeah, I feel like that's a bike that's a little more soulful and a little more approachable, because it kind of goes back to like, I think we talked about it a little bit before, but it's like when you pull up on a bike like that, it's like there's a perception about somebody who pulls up on a bike like that, right? And
with
like,
the BMW?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
You're like, what does this guy do? Like, he's not actually riding this.
He's a dentist.
Yeah, it's the guy who's like driving around the Jeep on some big wheels.
Exactly.
Like, you driving that to the mall, dude?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
like,
Let's get real. Do you really need that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's cool that like you didn't connect, the connection didn't hit.
Did not happen. But that Honda, that Africa Twin, that's actually a cool bike. And that is fun to ride.
Heck yeah.
It feels like a motorcycle.
Yeah.
The BMW never felt like a motorcycle to me.
Yeah. A car on 2 wheels, basically.
Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And plus I'm not a big guy, and that's a big bike.
Sure.
So there's that factor. And like, I don't know. So if I get a second bike, it might be an adventure bike, but I'm kind of like looking at it like, I don't know, like an old Royal Enfield or Triumph or something.
That'd be cool.
Something small, like a 500cc max.
Something to like run around town on and stuff.
Yeah, something kind of cheap.
Yeah.
You know, like I can just go thrash it like on a dirt road in the middle of winter, when it's snowy and muddy and not
That'd
care.
Be cool.
Just be like, whatever.
Yeah.
I wrecked it 3 times today. I don't care.
Do you ever ride dirt bikes here?
No.
Is that something you've ever considered doing?
No.
Like single track?
I wouldn't say I haven't considered it.
Yeah.
I just haven't ever done it.
Yeah.
Never really been in that world.
Sure.
Like, I don't really know anybody who does it much. And
yeah, I feel like too, it's not like a super prominent thing here just because of how like restricted the mountains are. There's not a ton of like single track that's legal anymore. And
okay.
Yeah, so I think it's a little more tough.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more rogue.
Right.
Everybody I know, they're like poaching rogue trail all the time, and like, yeah.
Which kind of sucks to have to do that.
I know. Yeah, it's kind of a bummer, especially because this used to be such a place where you could go do stuff like that.
Right.
But, yeah. Well, as we kind of get closer to wrapping this thing up, what are some of the next big adventures you have? I know you're getting ready to head down to Mexico, but do you have any more big international stuff planned?
I think our big next one will be trying to get back on board with doing South America.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I think that'll be our next big like year-long trip.
Have you ridden down there on your chopper before?
No, I haven't been south of Mexico.
Could you basically ride from here down to there? Is that what the plan is?
You can. Yeah, that would be the plan. To ride from here to Ushuaia, which is the southernmost town in South America. The only part you can't ride is the Darien Gap.
Okay.
It's basically impossible to get through. It's hard to even walk through it. So people ship their bikes around.
Interesting.
You can either like put it in a crate and ship it, and then fly across and pick it up. Or I have seen people basically charter a sailboat and then put the bike on the sailboat and then sail around it.
That would be pretty
which
sweet.
I think I would like to do it that way.
Yeah.
Even though I do get seasick, I think I would endure it just for that.
Yeah, that would be a pretty epic experience,
I think so, yeah.
man.
Yeah.
When you're out there, I know you've done like a couple of YouTube videos along the way, right?
A couple.
Yeah. Is that something you think you would ever do more of? Or do you feel like it's kind of like getting like those brand sponsorships where it's like taking away from your experience of actually being there?
No, I don't think it'd be taken away from it. I think there's a lot of value in video.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really nice way to share what you're doing when you're traveling. Honestly, what it comes down to for me is like organizing and editing all that.
Yeah.
Like I don't really know how to do it. The few times I've tried to do it, I lose patience almost immediately because I don't know what I'm doing.
Sure.
And I'm like, man, there's a lot of time put into these YouTube videos, like a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if I want to do that. I would rather just snap a picture.
Yeah.
Share that, which I think they both have value.
100%. And I think just scrolling through your Instagram feed and everything, you've done such a good job of like curating it in a nice way where it's digestible and it's fun and like,
yeah, cool.
It's almost like it is similar to a video, you know, there is value in both of them. And I almost like photo more, especially in a world that's like overflowed with content anymore.
Right.
Because the photo like lets you kind of like paint your own picture.
Sure.
Especially with a caption, whereas like a video is just like you get what you get.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's interesting.
I don't know. I go back and forth on that one. Like there are some times I'm like, man, that's like this last trip would have been pretty cool. I had like the ability to put together like a 2-hour, like a feature length film.
Yeah.
I'm like, I think that trip could have warranted that.
For sure.
But I have like 30 seconds of iPhone video.
Yeah.
So it'll never happen.
Yeah. I feel like it's so hard too when you're, you know, like it sounds like you would like to be in the moment and enjoying everything around you. So it's so hard to be like, click your camera on and be like, this is where we're at.
I left home with big ambitions of doing video.
Yeah.
And I went out and bought a GoPro and I was like kind of taking some video. Still not great about like remembering to do it because that was part of it too. I kept forgetting. Like, oh yeah, I have that GoPro. I should use that thing. And then I like, what do I even video? Like, I don't know. Like, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And then I had it mounted onto my handlebar and the mount broke.
Oh no.
So it goes flying off my bar, tumbling down the road and just like basically shattered. And then at that point, I was like, screw this thing.
Yeah.
I'm over it.
That
was like 3 weeks into the trip. Like I had barely even left.
Yeah. The one cool thing I think about like the YouTube stuff and the video stuff is it almost creates like a really cool diary for you to look back on. Like I have a buddy who we just did an episode with him a couple weeks ago and he does cars. So Hondas are like his big thing.
Cool.
Like motor swapping and stuff like that. Really cool projects. But he was saying when we were just down there, he lives in Tampa. He was like, dude, it's really funny to like look back on what my life was like 5 or 8 years ago. And like, it's like, oh, I've never really thought about it being like almost like a diary, you know, where you get to look back on insane experiences. Yeah. But I mean, there is something to be said about just having them in your head too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of beauty in that. Yeah. Well, I guess another big question for me is like, what inspires you to continue to keep showing up and like, not only making incredibly cool Instagram posts, but you know, you have your blog as well. I see you're uploading there all the time.
Yeah.
And then continuing to plan these insane trips. Like what inspires you to do that?
I feel like the more I see, the more I realize that I haven't seen hardly anything. Like there's always so much more. Like You know, like look at a map and be like, wow, I've really seen a lot. Like I've been to a lot of places. And I'm like, oh wait, that's still like 2% of the landmass that I've seen. Like there's so much more.
That's bizarre to consider.
You know? It's like if you think about it, I just did this little route around the world, right? But the entire route was flanked by thousands of more miles of land.
That's so crazy to think about. Yeah, because when you're out there, you're like, and you're pounding the pavement. I'm sure it feels like you're like, I've seen everything.
Right. There's so much more.
Yeah.
There's always more.
I saw a figure a couple of years ago that was like less than 1.5% of the entire Earth is paved.
Oh, wow.
Like pavable surface. And
So,
I was like,
there you go.
That's
there you go.
nuts to even consider.
Yeah.
You know, because when you look around, especially when you're in a city, you're like, dude.
It's all pavement.
Yeah.
It feels like it anyway.
Yeah. And then I'm sure when you're out there on those dirt roads, you're like, I wish there was some pavement.
Every once in a while, yeah.
How do you feel like your perspective towards people or towards the world has changed throughout all these travels?
Oh, man. It's maybe just really realize that everybody around the world at the end of the day we're all the same. We're all just waking up in the morning, figuring out what we're doing with our day, trying to put food on the table, trying to be happy. And I feel like we're all kind of trying to help our neighbors to some degree as well, you know, and kind of getting back to that earlier about all this BS that the media feeds us and makes it uncomfortable for people to go travel because of all this. And that's always kind of my go-to response when I'm having that conversation with somebody is I'm like, those people are getting fed the same crap that we are.
Yeah.
Having the same conversation that we're having. All they're doing, like they're doing the same thing you're doing. Their alarm goes off in the morning. They get up, they go to work, take a lunch break, they go back to work, they go home, spend time with their family, watch TV. Like it's all the same. We're all doing the same thing. We just speak different languages, maybe have a different religion, eat different food. But when you really, really boil it down, we're all doing the same thing.
Yeah. I think that's like a really profound thing to consider too. And I think the word for like being aware of other people are living incredible lives like yours, like is sonder. And it's always a crazy thing to me, like going down the road or like when I'm riding my bike through a neighborhood and like you looking through somebody's window and they're sitting there having dinner and you're just like, whoa, like, this is my experience. But those people are sitting over there having a completely different experience. Or you look up at an airplane.
And if you wrecked your bike in front of their house, they'd probably come out and help you.
Totally. It
wouldn't matter if you shared a language.
Yeah.
It's just humans
being
human. That's just
what we do.
Yeah.
And I think there's, again, a lot of beauty in that. And removing ourselves from consuming so much nonsense, I think, is so important. And I hope, you know, that more people are able to get out and travel and experience that, because
I feel like it would solve a lot of problems in this world.
Yeah.
If more people just came to that basic, what I view as a very simple understanding of humanity. Like, we're all just here living, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that, like, why the hatred?
Yep.
Because
and especially here.
Because the hatred is like not really there for the most part either.
And it's bizarre, like I think especially here in the United States, how frustrated we get about simple things because of how good we have it. We almost create problems for ourselves that don't exist. I was having this conversation with a friend the other day. He's like, don't you think that's weird that like, and he said the same thing. He's traveled all over the world riding BMX. And he's like, you don't understand how good we have it until you see it somewhere else. And then you're just like, whoa, those problems that we think are so big in our own lives here, they don't even exist in 90% of the world because they can't. Yeah. And we're lucky to have those problems.
We're lucky to have the time to be concerned about these pretty nonsensical things.
Yeah. It's pretty bizarre, man. When you really take a step back and think about that, and like, and then think about like 200 years ago when like you couldn't even, you were worried about predators in some places still. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's pretty insane like how lucky we are, how quick. You know, so I mean,
everybody in the world has their own struggles. Even here in the US, people have their own struggles that are legitimate struggles. And that's the same everywhere. Like everybody's got their own little struggles and problems, but man,
Yeah.
We're all the same.
Be kind and help people out, man.
That's all it is.
I think that really, when I think about happiness too, like I feel like that's such a big thing that you should do or consider, is like, instead of going out and being angry at the world, like go out and try and be helpful to others, because in turn that'll make you appreciate things.
Otherwise you're just complaining. And you're part of the problem.
Yeah. And nobody wants to be part of the problem.
Yeah, don't be the problem.
As we're closer to the end of this, I would love for you to touch a little bit on your blog.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what that program looks like, what you're doing over there, and why you do it.
So my wife and I started that as a way to not only share our own stories, but to share the stories of other people as well. We don't want it to be like our blog. That being said, I do contribute a fair amount to it.
Sure.
What we envisioned for it, and it's been a little slow getting off, and that's partly our fault for not being more proactive with it. But so there's a $12 subscription to it, so it's not a free access. And so what we envision, the reason why we charge, is because we would like other travelers to be able to contribute their stories, and we pay them for that. So we're not asking people, or we don't want people to contribute for free. We do have some people that have, because they're like, whatever, I just want to help, which is awesome. But ultimately, we'd like it to be a way for people who are out there traveling the world to share the stories and make a few bucks, to stay out there and keep doing it.
That's awesome.
So it's not like a for profit, like that $12 subscription isn't because we're trying to make money.
Sure.
That's intended to go back to the people who are contributing.
I think that's a really incredible way to approach it too.
Yeah.
Kind of it goes back to feeding the community again, like the people who continue to make or share rad things, like they're able to, it comes full circle.
Yeah.
So is it primarily motorcycle based, or is it kind of just traveling based?
It has been a lot of motorcycle stuff, mainly because we know so many of those people.
Yeah.
But we actually would like it to be traveling of all sorts. If we could find people who want to contribute a hiking story, bicycle travel story, be awesome. Train hopping, like anything just a little bit outside the norm.
Yeah.
Is what we're about.
I have some friends I need to introduce you guys to then. Because
Awesome.
I have some friends that do a lot of train hopping, and I have some other friends that travel the entire globe riding BMX professionally.
Awesome.
So,
because our goal is to help motivate people to just get out there and see the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be on a motorcycle. They care less.
Yeah. By any means necessary.
Just go out there and do it.
And I feel like, especially now, like it's never been more approachable to go see the world.
Yeah.
You know, it's so approachable. It's pretty easy to do because the internet is insane. The amount of access that you have.
Very accessible, yeah.
And like you've done, you know, you talk about this crazy network of people. Like you found those people, I'm assuming, through the internet or friends of friends. And like, yeah, it's not that difficult to go out there and find that anymore. So
no, it really isn't.
It's cool that you guys are creating a platform that further enables that.
I've been following this guy from somewhere in England. I think he's in Thailand now. I kind of lost track of him there for a minute. But hitchhiking. He's just hitchhiking. He's like, I'm going to hitchhike around the world.
That's so cool.
So he's like walking a lot of it, or he's hitching rides with truckers or people.
That's sick.
Or whatever.
Hitchhiking is such another one of those things to me that's always just been so like mind blowing to me.
I'm like, I keep drilling him. Like, I want a story from you.
Yeah.
Like, I want to hear more about this.
That's so cool, dude. I would love to hear a story about it too. There's talking about that like railroad track pipe dream. For years, I've wanted to do a marketing campaign through Traction.
Oh, yeah.
Where we only use coffee as currency to get from coast to coast by hitchhiking.
Awesome.
And I think that would be such a fun thing to do, just because like I've always been infatuated with the idea of hitchhiking. But I'm like, how can I involve that in like the business somehow? You know, just like trade coffee beans to get to where you need to go or whatever.
Trade a bag of beans for lunch or whatever.
Yeah, I think it'd be so fun. Yeah, you can't have any money, but you just have coffee.
Well, I have a friend of mine who just finished a book that I'm actually about halfway through, who, as kind of a social experiment, hitchhiked from New York to Alaska.
Whoa.
Left his house with $0, And the rules were he had to get all the way there without spending a dime. Like, he wouldn't accept money from anybody. He wasn't going to spend any money.
Wow.
And made it.
What's the book called?
Wanderlust.
I'm going to have to check that
Yeah,
out.
it's pretty good.
I love stories
There's a lot
like
of
that.
stories in the book. That's just one of them. But like, he'd hitch a ride for a while, get dropped off in a town. He'd go to a restaurant, go inside, and be like, "Hey, can I clean your parking lot of all the trash and trade for lunch?" kind of thing.
That's so cool.
And worked it out.
It's kind of like that, like the paperclip experiment, right? Where you start with the paperclip and you trade your way up to a car or something.
Right.
It's the same kind of concept. I love that kind of stuff because it is that further details what we were talking about earlier is like the kindness that is truly inside of people.
Yeah.
Like through things like that, we can really expose what that looks like.
Exactly.
So that's cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's cool.
Couple more for you, and then we'll get out of here.
Cool.
But what kind of advice would you give to somebody if they came to you looking for long distance motorcycle travel tips? Like your top 3.
1, walk out your front door and just do it. Which I know sounds very vague. I know, but it's overcoming that hurdle of fear. I think what holds people back from it is fear of the unknown. What happens if I break down? What happens if I get a flat tire? What happens if I can't find somewhere to stay for the night? Which is why I always start with just walk out your front door and start doing it. You will figure this out as you go. Don't overthink it. Have a general destination in mind, but leave your route vague. Leave your timeline vague, because things change every day. You never know what's going to happen. You might stumble across somewhere you want to stay longer than you had intended. And don't even make your destination really that set in stone either. I mean, it could just be a region. You can be like, I want to do coast to coast across the U.S. over the course of a month. I would consider that long distance.
Yeah.
If you live in L.A. and you want to do coast to coast, like, don't pick out a town on the East Coast. Like, you have 1,500 miles of coastline.
It's a big place.
All you got to do is hit the ocean at some point.
Point it east.
That'll be your coast to coast.
Don't even look at the map. Just point it
Point
east.
east. You'll get there eventually.
Oh, I love it. I also really like the don't overthink it, because I feel like in pretty much every aspect of life, like we can plan and plan and plan.
Yeah.
And then the second something goes wrong, we feel like everything
out.
is messed up.
And it's all falling apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in reality, control is an illusion. So, just let it go. I love that.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah. Just start your bike and go.
Yeah. Get off the couch.
Yeah.
It's usually the best first step for anything. So, some profound advice from a guy who's done it. And if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self any piece of advice, what would it be?
Ooh. Oh man, I think I would have jumped in deeper sooner. Like I said, I did a lot of travel around the U.S. I wish my eyes had been more open to international at 18 years old. They were in some ways, but I wish I had maybe known some more people that did international travel, because I wasn't surrounded by those types of people. So it wasn't really on my radar that at 20 years old or 18 years old that I could hop on a plane and fly to Europe. Like, that wasn't even a thought. That was a possibility.
Sure.
So looking back, I think I would have been like, toss the U.S. map in the trash and grab a world map.
I love that.
There's a lot more to see.
Yeah, the world's a big place.
Yeah, you're looking at it on this scale. You need to be looking at it on this scale.
Again, that almost goes back to most things in life, right?
Yeah.
Like it's very easy for us to get stuck looking at stuff through a pinhole.
Totally.
And there really is no limit to what is possible, whether it's travel or going on insane long distance rides or whatever it may be. Like, I love that. So thank you.
Sure.
And last but not least, do you have any parting motivating words for the people who may be listening still?
I'm just going to repeat myself.
Yeah.
just walk out the front door and do it.
I love it. Yeah, that's perfect, man.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm
Appreciate
excited to hopefully hang out a little bit more. And
Absolutely.
yeah, get you some coffee before you head out the
Cool.
door too.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can't wait to keep following you along on all these
Awesome.
journeys, man.
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
well, yeah, if you guys are enjoying these episodes on Spotify, Apple, or Amazon, please follow the show on the app to be notified when new episodes drop every Friday, and leave us a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. This greatly helps us continue to make this project happen. Thank you all for being here. We'll catch you on the next one. Keep being scared of normal. We're out.